Hello, stream. Oh, dang, people are chatting. Okay, well, I'm just going to leave the chat there instead of refreshing the window. Hi, Kristen. Yeah, I got up on time this morning. I went for, exercise. It was great. I definitely deserve a reward. Hey, Lauren. I'm going to change your name for my own sake. As I do for many of my regular viewers. Open up my Kindle app. Close my copy of Ancients by Riley S. Keane. And open up Yerrin. Had a little miniature Twitter conversation with Hank Green this morning. Feeling pretty good about it. I like Hank a lot. Oh, that reminds me. What's weird? Sorry, what's weird? What did I do? Yup. So my kids and I recently finished listening to the first Harry Potter audiobook, which is pretty great. Okay, Lauren, no problem. Hank was talking about... He tweeted last night, he said, YouTube has never created an advertising product that was focused on creators instead of advertisers. And then he tweeted this morning, he was that tweet got a lot of attention overnight, and so he woke up and he saw it and he said, you know, this tweet got a lot of attention overnight, but it's very easy for me to say, you know, YouTube should focus on creator-focused advertising without knowing what that actually looks like. And so I'm interested to hear what people think that would look like. And I pointed out that some people might have ideas, but very few. What I said was the number of your followers who know as much as you do about YouTube advertising products is statistically non-existent. And so that just sparked a whole conversation about how it works on YouTube and how it works on Amazon. Which it was a bit of a one-sided conversation. I said a lot of things. but got a few replies from Hank in there, and just a good start to the morning. You know what I mean? Just nice. Yeah. The idea that I proposed was almost everyone on YouTube sells merch. At least once they get to a certain size, right? You do merch. Why not? Why doesn't YouTube have a merch marketplace? And creators can put their merch, make their merch available via YouTube, and the ads for that merch show up on that creator's channel, obviously. And if somebody is watching a YouTube video and they actually click through and buy that creator's merch, that makes them super strong in the algorithm, because of course, like, because YouTube is getting a portion of the sale, and that viewer clearly, like, that creator clearly engages their audience in a very real way if they're actually getting them to open their wallets. Oh, hey, Dave. I didn't even see you. Sorry, man. Yeah, totally. And they could offer advertising templates and all that sort of stuff. Make it available to the creator, oh my God, make it available to the creator where they can put an ad, they can record a video ad that will play in front of their own videos, limited to 15 seconds or whatever the fuck, advertising their shirt, so that when you tune in to one of my Writer Wednesday videos, before the video starts playing, it's just me, and it's like, hey, it's Garrett. You're about to watch the Writer Wednesday shirt, but I just wanted to remind you, you're about to watch a Writer Wednesday video, but I just want to remind you, I have a shirt. It says, have I mentioned I write books? And it's awesome. You should get it. And those ads can show before that video for that creator. And if they buy because of that ad, YouTube gets a larger portion of the sale because obviously they're missing out on advertising dollars they would otherwise be making, right? But the creator has an ad on their own video to sell their own merch through YouTube. I was thinking just like a visual placement ad, because YouTube has those as well. They show off to the side of the video if you don't have ad block or YouTube Red. Okay, let's get to work. Yeah. No, it was relatively obvious that you had ad block. All right. They crossed to Bertram's eastern district, built on the wedge of land between the two smaller rivers. Shortly after that, Conja stopped in front of a large building. It looked like a simple shop, but its front door was locked and barred shut. Conja began to lead them around to the back of the building, but Lauren stopped her, turning to Uzo and Shion. Wait here, she said. I will take Anis and Jem inside. Only come after us if you hear trouble. Oh, I don't care that you have ad block. I don't have advertisements on any of my products willingly. I have the advertisements play on my Twitch stream. I'm sure they do, but I don't make any money from that. So, ad block away. And I don't have any ads on my YouTube videos. Shion nodded, and she and Uzo took position to either side of the alley beside the building. Conja gave Uzo a little wave as she left. He returned it with a sickly smile. They followed her around the back of the building, where a small door led to an apartment built in the building's rear. She knocked, and soon they heard a voice on the other side of the door. Who is that? Oh, stay safe, Lauren. Unpacking is a dangerous job. Who is that? Conja smiled at Lauren and winked. It is Conja, you rascal. I can see that, my dear. I am asking about the others with you. Lauren looked closer at the door. She could not see a peephole. How could Weil see them? I have brought some new friends who wish to meet you for business. Normally, new friends are my favorite people, but recent events have soured me on company. Mayhap another time. Conja drew back, looking nervously over her shoulder at Lauren's party. But Weil, I vouch for them. And I trust you implicitly, my dear, yet I do not trust them. The smith pulled nervously at her collar. Lauren licked her lips and stepped forth. Trust is not always necessary for business, she said, especially when such business may fill your pockets for many months to come. A long silence stretched from behind the door. That is a mighty promise. You do not know how deep my pockets are, yet I know what I have brought to fill them. Another long silence. When Weil spoke again, Lauren thought she could hear some amusement in his tone. Never let it be said that I do not respect confidence, even when that confidence borders on arrogance. Come in, then, I suppose. They heard a bar sliding. Conja breathed a sigh of relief and reached out to open the door. No one stood inside. Lauren saw only a steep staircase leading up to the second floor. Where is he? Said Lauren. Upstairs, said Conja. Come. She led them up the stairs. What? It's lead, right? Yeah, it's lead, okay. She led them up the stairs. The second floor was entirely separate from the first, and a half-wall divided part of the back room from the front. The place looked as if it had once been well furnished. The chairs and cabinetry were of fine craftsmanship, fine rugs were on the floor, and Lauren spotted dishes with gold and silver inlay. But the apartment looked as though a disaster had struck it. There were bits of splintered wood on the floor, and as though some furniture had been destroyed in a fight and no one had yet tidied up. There were stains on some of the rugs, and while they might be wine, Lauren suspected blood. In a blue winged armchair sat a dark man with sharp eyes. He wore a black vest over a long cream-colored tunic and dark blue pants that went into high leather boots. His appearance was immaculate, utterly at odds with the state of his dwelling. In his hand was a glass goblet full of wine, which he set down as he rose from the chair to greet them. Lauren thought to herself that that was entirely unnecessary, since he must have been standing when they arrived, and had only sat so that he could stand up again. His eyes roved across Lauren's little group, studying each one of them with interest. His gaze lingered long on Annis, and he blinked more than once at Lauren's striking green eyes. "Greetings to all and a good evening to you," he said, bowing low. As Conja has no doubt told you, I am known as Weil, or likely you knew that already, for I heard that you have been searching for me. But I do not think I know you, or have heard of you, and you are a bit younger than the friends I am used to meeting. His eyes flicked to Lauren again as he said it. But Weil, cried Conja, what on earth has happened here? She gawked at the destruction all around them. Nothing you should worry your muscular self about, said Weil. It is a small situation with which I have only recently dealt. I shall have the place in order by tomorrow. Conja still looked upset, but Lauren cared little for whatever trouble Weil had had as long as it had passed. She stepped forward to speak before Conja could ask further questions. We are friends and travelers passing through, and our age does not diminish the quality of our goods. We have some items that we wish to sell you if you are interested. They are of the finest quality, and nothing we would want to sell where certain red-clad friends might catch wind of it. Weil's eyes widened, and the corners of his lips turned down in thought. Of course, he said, naturally. Well, if we are to do business, then I should don my business garments. A moment, if you would. He retreated to the back section of the room where the half-wall hid him from view. Lauren and Annis gave each other an odd look. Jem looked at Conja and frowned. Business garments? Some finery of his, no doubt. Conja gave a little smile. I have seen him in many fine clothes, as well as none at all. From his expression, Lauren thought Jem might be sick. Then they heard the crash of a window from the back of the room. Dark below, growled Lauren. She ran around the half-wall. A window in the front of the building had been broken, and Weil was nowhere to be seen. Jem, down the stairs, she cried. I will go after him. Lauren ran to the window. Weil was already halfway to the ground. There were tiles and bricks set in the wall. Lauren had thought them a decoration, but now she saw they formed a sort of ladder leading down, an escape route, in case Weil found himself cornered. Lauren admired the precaution. She leaped out the window and took the same route down. Weil jumped the last 2 paces to the ground. He landed in a crouch and came up running. But he had not predicted the mystics. Uzo leaped out of the alley, hands grasping. Weil seized the spearman's arm and flipped him around, then kicked his legs out from under him. Uzo landed hard on his back, but Shiun appeared, driving a fist into Weil's stomach. He fell to the street, wheezing. Lauren reached the ground a moment later, and Jem appeared just after. Lauren helped Uzo to his feet. He had hit the back of his head when he landed, and he rubbed it ruefully while glaring at the smuggler. Lauren tossed her head towards the back of the building. Bring him back to his hideout, she said. This is not a conversation for the open air. They took him back to the door leading to the staircase, but Lauren commanded Shiun and Uzo to wait again. One of you remain here and one at the front of the building. I will not let him try the same trick twice, but be ready just in case. In truth, she had no wish for the mystics to learn of her mage stones. Uzo and Shiun nodded and went to do as they were bid. Lauren put a hand on Weil's shoulder. He tried to shake her off, but before he could react, she pulled one hand up behind his shoulder blades and shoved him up the stairs. Be still. You will not escape me a second time, but I have no wish to hurt you. You are hurting me now, said Weil. But to her surprise, his tone was affable. He stopped resisting and walked up the stairs without further trouble. Once they had entered the apartment again, Lauren released him with a shove. Conja still stood where she had been, eyes wide and head swinging back and forth. I do not understand. What is wrong? A sudden change of heart has come over me, said Weil. I decided, rather abruptly, it is true, that I would rather not do business with these new friends. But why? Said Conja, blinking. Weil sighed and rubbed at his temples. Conja, you are a lovely woman, if too trusting, and a more than passable lover, but you are a terrible judge of people. Your new friends are the king's law. Conja gasped and took a step back. Her eyes grew panic, and she seemed as if she might run. He speaks the truth, said Lauren, but you need not fear. Not her, mayhap, said Weil. He shook his head with a sigh. But I hold no illusions for myself. What a tragedy. I am too pretty and too clever to die under the knives of mystics, and just after ridding myself of another gaggle of troublemakers. Jem gave a loud snort. Lauren shot him a glare. You have no reason to fear us, Weil, nor was that little display of yours necessary, said Lauren. We are not here to kill you, nor to put you to the question. But I think I would prefer the rest of our conversation to be conducted in private, if you do not mind. She tossed her head towards Conja. Weil stared at her for a moment, and then a slow smile crept across his lips. He went to Conja and put his hands on her shoulders. Whether she tells the truth or no, neither of us gains anything by your being here, my sweet, he said. Go and take care of yourself. I will see you soon, if I can. Conja gave Lauren one last uneasy look, but she nodded. Then she pulled in Weil and kissed him deep and long. Lauren and Anna studiously averted their gazes, and Jem openly made a gagging noise. But the moment passed, and then Conja left through the apartment's back entrance. Lauren waved a hand at the staircase. That one hardly did much to guard your presence here. Whatever made you entrust her with the secret? Weil shrugged. Conja is a fine woman, as I said, and when someone comes to Bertram looking for those who deal beyond the king's law, they never look twice at a steelsmith. I wonder, in fact, how you found her. How painful it must be to wonder, said Lauren. To her amusement, Weil very nearly pouted. Painful indeed. The pout turned into the same curious smile she had seen earlier. But now we have wasted enough time on, shall we call them pleasantries? I wish to hear the real reason you sought me. Servants of the king's law, seeking to deal with a man like me? I begin to think you may be even better friends than I first thought. We may be, said Lauren. It has come to my knowledge that you deal in certain goods of inestimable price, and because of that we know that you know a great deal about the family Yerrin. Weil's amused look fell away at once. He folded his arms over his chest. I feel my mind changing again. On second thought, or rather third, or is it fourth, I think I would rather not have any dealings with you at all. How unfortunate for you, said Lauren. We have come to the point where your preferences matter very little to me. The smuggler's eyes narrowed. How did you come to be here, anyway? You seem to know a very great deal about me, but I only know that you were the Nightblade. That took Lauren aback. You know who I am? Weil shrugged. Rumors are one of the most important tool of my trade. Many people whisper about the green-eyed girl in the black cloak. He pointed at her face and then her body. Green eyes, black cloak, and servant of the king's law. You know more about me than you make it sound, said Lauren. Just because I hear rumors does not mean I rely overmuch on them, said Weil. Many tales about you are obvious lies, like how you escaped a constable's prison with a magic cloak. I wish to learn a truth or two instead. Lauren well remembered Zane's warning. Weil had no love for the wizard and would not be pleased to find out Lauren was his friend. It does not much matter how I heard of you, she said. Come now, I am at your mercy. Who cares if I know how it came about? Weil began counting on his fingers. Was it Torbrick who told you? He has never forgiven me for that mess with the Calenton ship. Or mayhap that girl Jessa. She has caused me more than a fair share of troubles, and all because of a little misunderstanding over hemlock. Ah, I have it. It was that idiot of idiots, Rob. If I hear one more word from him about that den of lovers... Stop, said Lauren. If it will cease your prattling, I will tell you. I learned of you from Zane of the family Foradar. Weil's already annoyed expression turned to dismay. Zane? Sky above. A trio of misfortunes has befallen me at once. A girl made out of rumors, sent by one of the worst investments I ever made, on some business concerning the Yerrins. No, that is 3 reasons for me to have nothing to do with whatever this is, and any of the reasons would be good enough on its own. Lauren felt herself at somewhat of a loss. The man clearly wanted nothing to do with her, and whenever she tried to argue with him, he only talked circles around her. But in the moment's silence, Annis stepped forward. You need not have any dealings with the family Yerrin at all, said Annis. We only wish to know what they are up to. A small group of Yerrins have been crisscrossing their way across Dorsey. We need to find them. Surely you must know something. Weil eyed her. And how much do you know about the family Yerrin exactly? Annis's cheeks darkened for a moment. Quite enough. Oh, said Weil, I wonder if you know what they do to anyone who attempts to interfere with their trade. No, not even interfere, but just to skim a small bit on the side. I've had friends who attracted their attention. Have had, I say, for none of them still live. And they were not quick in dying. The Yerrins saw to that. No, I do not imagine you know very much about the Yerrins at all, or you would not pursue them in the first place. Annis smiled, though the expression was devoid of humor and held only a clear threat. Lauren shuddered at how closely she resembled Damaris in that moment. You guess wrong. I myself am of the family Yerrin. You have the honor of addressing Annis, daughter of Damaris. Weil's mouth opened at once as if to reply by reflex, but once he heard Annis's words, his voice died in his throat. His skin went several shades paler. At last he choked out, I had not heard that you still traveled with the Nightblade. Yet you can see that I do, said Annis, and I would ever so much appreciate your help. But of course, if you will not give it, I shall be forced to send a letter to my darling mother. Weil swallowed hard. I know you would not. They say you have sundered yourself from her. There are precious few rumors about you, but they all agree on that. If so, they speak the truth, said Annis, and certainly we are on no friendly terms. Yet whatever opinion she holds of me, my mother, and in fact all my kin, would be most interested to learn the name of a man dealing in maidstones, and just where in Bertram he might be found. Weil stared at her for a long, silent moment. Then his gaze rose to Lauren, and he flashed her a wide smile. The Nightblade of the High King, he said, giving her a deep bow. I am most pleased to make your acquaintance. It will, of course, be my pleasure to serve you. Oh, Weil, you rascal. Chapter 17. That's what I was doing. Hey, what's up, Dread? Sorry, just marking one thing down here. Ooh, tummy rumbles. All right. Doing pretty good, Dread. How about yourself? Chapter 8. Here we go. Weil had a broad, solid table of oak, and across it he unfurled a map, holding down the corners with large tomes bound in leather. When that was done, he had Annis lay out their journey in Dorsey thus far. They started with riding south out of Feldamar and crossing the Sunmane Pass, and then the mad crisscross through Dorsey's western towns, finally ending in Sidwan, where they had lost Damaris's trail. Jem soon grew bored by the conversation and went to sit in Weil's great armchair, where he promptly fell asleep. When they had finished telling the tale, Weil pursed his lips and pulled at the thin scrub of beard on his chin. That is quite the journey, and I hear little information that may help, said Weil. She could have thrown you from her trail long ago, and you never realized it until Sidwan. We thought of that, said Annis, but to a man so clever as yourself, surely such a setback would be merely a distraction. Weil arched an eyebrow. You wound me, my dear, though doubtless you do not intend to. There are some kingdoms where the word clever carries a more sinister connotation, and Dorsey is one such. Annis's eyes went wide, and she tilted her head to the side like a bird. Is it? I had not the slightest idea. You must forgive me. The smuggler hid a smile. I shudder to think how sharp your wits will be in adulthood. I will choose to take that as a compliment, said Annis, giving a perfect curtsy. I think you were right that Damaris would stay well away from Danfon and the other major cities, said Weil, looking back at the map. It would simply be too great a risk. But then again, an unexpected course is often the best way to accomplish something nefarious, and it is well known that Damaris is both crafty and devious, meaning no offense to her daughter, of course. Very well, I will send word at once to my friends in the city, and we shall see what may be seen, but there is nothing else we can do tonight. After I send my letters, I will retire, and I suggest that you do the same. We must all hope that the morning will bring news. Well enough, said Lauren. In that case, there is only one matter more we must discuss with you. She looked at Annis and tapped her cloak where an inner pocket held her maidstones. Ah, yes, said Annis. We did not entirely lie to you when we came here. We do carry a certain valuable cargo, and we do mean to sell it, or at least a portion of it. Weil drew back, looking back and forth between... Weil drew up, looking back and forth between them. Truly? Agents of the King's Law, dealing in maidstones. Wonders never cease. I think these are days when all of us will see many things we have never seen before, said Lauren. What price would you give us for them? For a moment, Weil did not answer, only pulling at his beard again and staring at the table in thought. Let us see. I could give you mayhap 50 weights per stone. Oh, sorry to hear about your cold, Dread. Lauren's knees went weak. With 50 weights, she could make a pauper's journey from one end of Underrealm to the other, and with 100, she could do the same thing but eat like a king the whole while. She had heard often that magestones were very valuable, but she had never known just how much so. She thought back to when she had found Damaris's caravan in Selv and its wagons containing secret compartments holding hundreds of magestones each. She did not have a great enough command of numbers to calculate how much coin that cargo would bring, but she guessed it was enough to buy half a kingdom. And then she almost fell over as Annis immediately replied, 80 weights. Weil frowned. Are you mad? On my best day I cannot sell them for 85, and 5 weights of profit is nowhere near enough for the risk I take. Annis rolled her eyes. You can sell them for nearly double 85, you brigand. We will sell them to you for 80 if you will buy at least 10 of them. The smuggler's frown deepened. 75, but I will buy 15. 76. Weil threw his hands up in the air. You are a merchant's daughter, he cried. You should conduct yourself with dignity. It is unbecoming to haggle for scraps. Annis spread her hands with a disarming smile. I must preserve at least some of my dignity as my daughter's mother. As my mother's daughter! I must preserve at least some of my dignity as my mother's daughter. Weil rolled his eyes just as she had, but Lauren thought she saw him hiding a smile as well. Very well, 76, you beggar. I shall collect the coins tonight and have them ready for you in the morning. Lauren did not think her tongue would work. Visions of piles and piles of gold weights danced in her mind, but she forced herself to be calm again, and she gave Weil a little half-bow. Though at first our meeting was fraught with tension, I am glad to have made your acquaintance regardless. We shall see you upon the morrow. Weil returned her bow with a deeper one. And you, Nightblade, if I am still uneasy about our association, I grant at least that it will be an interesting one. I beg only that you do not make it interesting in the same way that Zane did, leaving me alone and forlorn upon a riverbank without a copper in my pocket. Lauren raised an eyebrow. It seems that you and I have had at least some similar experiences with Zane, then. Oh, Weil looked surprised. You should have told me from the beginning that you and the wizard were not friends. It might have changed my opinion of you. Our road together was long, said Lauren. Things changed. Weil sniffed. Very well. I hope to hear the tale sometime, but that will have to wait for another day. Annis gave him an even deeper bow than he had given Lauren. They roused Jem and left. Shiyun waited outside the apartment's back door, and she pushed herself from the wall with a raised brow. Since I have not had to chase him down again, may I assume that negotiations went well? Well and better, said Lauren. He will begin gathering information at once, and we will return in the morning. I think we can trust him to do as we have bid him, but just in case. Shiyun nodded at once. I will remain here to watch the building and make sure. Thank you, said Lauren. I shall send Uzo to replace you after the moons have begun to lower in the sky. We are all of us weary. They fetched Uzo from the front of the building and made their way back towards their inn. Jem was nearly asleep as he walked, and Uzo had to keep a hand on the boy's shoulder to prop him up. Lauren took advantage of the mystic's distraction to step aside with Annis. How did you do that magic with Weil? She murmured. Said Annis, raising her eyebrows. I did know magic. You sold him the mage stones for thousands of gold weights, said Lauren. When we first met, you did not even know what the stones were. When we first met, you did not even know what the stones were, much less their price. Oh, that, said Annis. She dropped her gaze and smiled, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. It is simple, really. It would have been better if I had known their value to start with, for I likely could have fetched a better price. But I had to let him make his proposal first. I knew he would bid far, far less than they were worth. Once he gave his first offer, I picked what seemed a good amount higher and worked from there. And not that it matters much, but he is not giving us thousands of gold weights, not much over 1,000, in fact. Lauren scoffed. You speak as though that is not simply unimaginable wealth to almost all in Underrealm. Sometimes I forget you are a merchant's daughter in truth. Annis' smile widened, but for only a moment. We shall have to find some way to store them safely, of course. He will likely give us the coin in lockboxes, and we can spread them between all our saddlebags. At some point we should find a banker. Lauren hesitated a moment. Annis noticed it and looked at her curiously. Lauren's mouth worked for a moment before she spoke, more quietly and slowly than before. Oh, thanks for the host, Dread. Much appreciated. Wait, did the sound play? I didn't hear a sound. Was there a sound or no? Is my alert thingy messed up? Aha! I got logged out. Oh, it did work. Okay, good. It's been a long time on my alerts. I want to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Woo! Whiz, bang!
Okay, good. Excellent. Good times. Do. Let us not spread the coins among all our saddlebags, she said. Just yours, Jem's, and mine. It would be better if Chet did not know about it at all. There was a long silence between them as Annis looked away uncomfortably. This is about your dream, is it not? She said at last. I could understand Chet wanting to leave after what happened, but do you really think he would rob us into the bargain? I do not, said Lauren, but remember that Chet knows nothing about the Mage Stones. How would we explain where the coin came from in the first place? Ah, said Annis, nodding quickly. Of course, that is very wise. I should have thought. But her words died as the night's silence shattered. Deafening as thunder, the city's bells began to toll. The sound made them freeze in their tracks, and Lauren's hand went to her dagger. In all their journeys they had heard many bells tolling in alarm, and her first thought was that somehow she had been discovered, but she realized that was a ridiculous thought. A second thought flashed through her mind to replace the first. Damaris. Something is happening, she said. Jem had been startled to full wakefulness, and now he cringed every time the bells tolled anew. Is the city under attack? Lauren turned to Uzo. Go to Shiun at once. Make sure that Wild does not try to escape in the confusion. If you must, escort him to join the rest of us at the inn. Uzo nodded and ran off while Lauren turned to Annis and Jem. That goes for Chet as well. We must reach him at once. They set off at a sprint. What? Whatever this is, I do not like it. We must reach Chet at once. They set off at a sprint, only slightly hampered by Annis with her shorter legs and longer skirts. Soon they found the inn and ran inside. Lauren had planned to dash upstairs and find Chet, but she skidded to a halt on the threshold as she saw him there in the common room. Chet, she said, are you safe? We heard the bells. As did I, he said, and I came down to see what the fuss was all about. Then a crier came to the square outside. He told us the reason for the bells. His words died, and one hand rose to scrub at his face. His skin had gone ashen, and his fingers were shaking. Chet? She almost lifted a hand to reach for him, but she pulled it back at the last second. What is wrong? King Jun, the king of Dorsey, said Chet. He has been murdered. The crier said he was assassinated by the High King. Dorsey has joined the war on the side of the rebels. They stood there in silence for a moment, staring at him. Then Lauren shook herself out of her thoughts. The common room buzzed, and no one seemed to pay them any attention, but that might change. She had to get them out of sight. Upstairs, she said. Let us speak no further word until we are safe in our room. Annis began pacing the room's length even before Jem closed the door behind them. This cannot be, she said. It cannot be. Dorsey pledged its support to the High King. June was one of only 3 kings to do so at once. Enelin would never kill him when she so desperately needs the support of the other kingdoms. It is a ruse, then, said Lauren. It must be some work of the necromancer. Only they stand to benefit from the tumult this will cause. And my mother must be behind it, said Annis. Lauren stopped her pacing and turned. No, Annis was pacing. Lauren frowned. Damaris, what makes you think so? Anna shook her head, looking miserable. It is just as Weil said. She has done the unexpected. We thought she would stay away from the capital just as she wanted us to think. She went there and put this plan in motion, knowing we would be unlikely to follow her and discover her plot before she could carry it out. We thought she would avoid Dorsey's king, but all along she meant to kill him. But assassinating a king, said Lauren, that is no small feat, and she has only been in Dorsey a scant few weeks. Oh, she must have set events in motion long before, said Annis. I should have foreseen this. We wondered if she still served the necromancer, and now we know. Seizing power in Dorsey was a part of the grander scheme. Now this kingdom is a strong foothold. Indeed, Dorsey's betrayal is far worse than Dulmoon's. Dulmoon's strength of arms may be greater, but it lies far to the northeast. Dorsey is in the center of Underrealm, and it borders more kingdoms than any other. There is some small comfort. This threat would have been even greater if Damaris had managed to capture and hold Yawamba. From that stronghold she could have staged assaults into both Feldamar and Kalentin with relative ease. At least we thwarted her there, said Jem, and we will stop her here as well. It will not be so easy, said Anna, shaking her head. Yawamba was a mighty stronghold, but Damaris was isolated. Now she is in Danfon itself. She will have the full support of whoever has taken the throne after June's death. Yet I do not know how they think to thwart the will of the Senate. You mentioned that before, said Lauren. What is the Senate? Fuck's sake. There we go. A body of 12 representatives, 2 from each of the 6 states of Dorsey, said Danis. They govern most domestic matters within the kingdom, while the king has ultimate authority when it comes to war. But even in that, the Senate may gainsay him if enough of them unite in common purpose. Jem sniffed. That sounds hideously inefficient. It is meant to be, said Annis, a precaution so that no mad tyrant can lead the kingdom to ruin through warmongering. Yet Dorsey is the most warlike of all the kingdoms, said Lauren. Annis raised her eyebrows, spoken like a true daughter of Selvin. They are often embroiled in battles, yes, but they content themselves with small border skirmishes. The Senate is supposed to keep the king from doing anything too consequential. Lauren bit back her first angry answer and took a deep breath before answering in a calm voice. The people of Wellmont would say that Dorsey's actions have been consequential enough. Annis spread her hands. No kingdom is perfect. Some are merely less terrible than others. Jem looked back and forth between them with an uncomfortable expression. Mayhap we should put aside philosophy for a moment and consider our next action. It seems clear we must stop Damaris as well as the new Dorsian king. Lauren heaved a sigh. Jem was right. Her dislike of Dorsey mattered little in the face of their current predicament. Who would that be? Who would turn this kingdom against the High King? I do not know, said Annis. June is of the family Fae, and it will be someone else in that house who takes his place. But I do not know the royal families of all the 9 kingdoms very well. I know only that June has no siblings, and so it will be one of his cousins, or mayhap an uncle or aunt. Oh. So we mean to pit ourselves against a king, then? Said Chet quietly. Lauren looked at him. He sat on one of the beds, leaning against the wall beside it. His knees were up, his arms draped over them. He was not looking at any of them, but only picking at his nails. Only so far as we must, said Lauren gently. It seems clear we shall find Damaris in the capital, and she is our true aim. We hunt Damaris, she thought, wishing he could hear the words. You said you wanted to see it through, to catch her. Stay with me at least that long before you tell me you mean to leave. He glanced up, meeting her gaze, his face filled with the sad smile she had seen too often lately. Very well. It appears we ride for Danfon. Lauren nodded. Thank you, she whispered. Then she turned to the others. But not at once. We aim to get a good night's rest, and I still mean to. Jem, go to Wile's hideout. Tell Uzo and Shiyun to split the watch between themselves and that we ride from the city tomorrow. Then return here as quickly as you can and get to sleep. We should try to be up before the sun. Jem gave a quick nod and flew from the room. Chet readied himself for bed and fell asleep almost at once. Lauren prepared to do the same, but Anna stopped her for a moment. We should bring Wile with us, she said. Lauren's brows rose. Why? He is a smuggler, said Annis. Danfon will be in great turmoil, and the guards at its gates will be vigilant. We must enter the city with all possible discretion, and I do not doubt he can sneak us in without anyone seeing. That seems wise, said Lauren, nodding slowly. We will bring him then, though I doubt he will enjoy it. Annis grinned. I do not think he has enjoyed any part of his dealings with us yet. What is one more unpleasant duty? Lauren smiled. Thank you again, Annis. Our quest would be doomed without you. The girl waved a hand. You would muddle through somehow. You always do. I only do my best to make things a bit easier, and you do a marvelous job. Good night. They went to bed, Lauren on the floor and Annis on the pallet next to Chet's, but for a long while Lauren's thoughts would give her no peace. She had wondered why her dreams had led her here. Now she had a guess. They had a smuggler now who could help them enter Dorsey's capital without being seen. That seemed a boon, but if the dreams were truly meant to help her, they would have led her to Danfon long ago, before Damaris carried out this coup. Her hands tightened to fists. Chet's misgivings about her dreams wormed their way into her mind. Yet she could not bring herself to ignore them as he wished. How could she, when they were the only help she had? Back and forth her mind whirled as she lay on the room's floor. When Jem and Uzo returned, she shut her eyes and pretended to sleep, but slumber came slow. At last, shortly before Uzo went to replace Shiyun, Lauren's eyes closed. I sound as good as you feel. I'm actually doing okay. Just a early morning yawn. Chapter 9. What last chapter before I take a break? Chapter 9. The next morning they found Weil no more excited about their proposition than they had expected. The merchant greeted them drowsily in a fine coat of blue with golden trim, but he walked around his apartment in bare feet. He had cleaned the place up somewhat during the night, and there were now several chairs upon which to sit. When Annis explained what had happened and what they guessed about Damaris's role in the rebellion, he waved his hand in dismissal. I have learned of King Jun's death already, of course, and furthermore I know who has succeeded him. The man's name is Wojin, and he is Jun's uncle. Was, I should say. And I had already guessed that Damaris might have played some small part, though I am glad, of course, to hear it corroborated by such a capable mind as the Yerrin girls. Ah, well, our meeting has been a blessed one, and I have enjoyed every instant of it. Your departure grieves me, but I suppose it is fate's cruel wont to force such bitter partings. Lauren gave him a faint smile. Then let your poetic heart rejoice, smuggler. We do not mean to part ways with you at all. I need someone to get me into Danfon, and that person must be well acquainted with secret ways and passages that the king's law would not use. Who better for such a purpose than the great and honorable businessman, Weil? Weil tried to turn his expression into a smile, but it only became something of a grimace. I might have guessed that would be your aim, but your words are truer than you know. I am great and honorable, but I am a businessman above all. You mean to end a rebellion. There is little profit in such a scheme, and therefore I decline to offer my further service. Only the poorest of merchants can find no profit in a war, said Anna. Surely you can find some way to draw coin from a venture like ours. All humor left Weil's eyes. He leaned over his thick table, planting his hands flat upon it. I enjoy my jibes with you, girl, but never insult me that way again. I am no war hawk. The sudden vehemence in his voice surprised Lauren, and she felt ashamed without truly knowing why. Even Annis was taken aback for a moment, and Jem stared at Weil with wide eyes. Our apologies, said Lauren carefully. Indeed, I would not work with one who earned coin from the deaths of others, but we do need you, and our cause is honorable. We do not aim to join the war in Dorsey, but to end the far greater war across all of Underrealm. If you help us, you will be serving the cause of the High King herself. Can you not imagine that she would be grateful for such aid? How full might your coffers be after she expressed that gratitude? Weil drew back for a moment, pinching his chin between two fingers, but then he shook his head. My coffers are plentiful, and from dealings that are far less dangerous. Less dangerous, but still beyond the king's law, said Lauren. I am the Nightblade. I serve the High King directly. Imagine it, Weil. Imagine me in her council chamber, speaking to her of your bravery. Imagine her scrawling a writ upon parchment, a writ of amnesty for your past, shall we call them indiscretions? Anna stared at Lauren in surprise, but only for a moment before recovering. Think of it, Weil, she said, a bank account full of the High King's gold and a paper that absolves you from past crimes. You could become an honest businessman at last, making far more coin than you do now, and never fearing a constable's noose. Even my family would avoid you if you had the High King's favor. Twice Weil opened his mouth to answer, pointing his finger at them as if about to present a counter-argument. Twice he closed his mouth again, looking off distantly as thoughts seemed to flit behind his eyes. In the end he tilted his head at them with a wide smile. I will admit you present an attractive offer, though you hide insults within it. I have always been an honest businessman, but in this you have changed my mind. My heart sings at the opportunity to be of further service to Her Majesty. Lauren sent Chet and the Mystics to fetch the last of the supplies that they would need for the journey. When they had gone, Weil brought out the lock boxes full of gold coins to pay for her maidstones. Each box was made of iron and had a small latch at the bottom through which a lock could be placed. All the locks had the same key, which Lauren took from Weil and put in her coin purse. Each box held 4 rows of 25 gold weights each, and they were packed tightly with velvet so that the coins did not jingle when the boxes were moved. Annis insisted on opening all of the lock boxes to verify their count, and Weil seemed to take that as a great insult. Interesting. Studying old locks. Because I was like, wait, what kind of locks would they actually have? And it turns out locks have existed as far back as ancient Assyria, where they did not rely upon springs, interestingly. Because that was my main thing. I was like, wait, without springs, how do you have a lock? Turns out they figured it out. People have been trying to secure things for a very long time. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. As though I am a swindler, he complained. As though I would have lived this long in my line of work if I had acquired a reputation for shortchanging my customers. Annis inspected the lockboxes and then the pile of gold weights that would go directly into Lauren's coin purse. She pointed at the pile. There are 38 coins here where there should be 40. Poor Weil. Oh, boy. Let me just verify my count really quick now that I'm thinking about it. $76 times 15 is $1140. Here we go. Weil's eyes darted to the pile. He picked it up and fingered through it before looking at Annis uneasily. An honest mistake. My apologies. He put the pile down and pulled not 2, but 6 extra coins from the purse at his belt. By way of amends, he muttered. Most excellent, said Annis, clapping her hands. Let us store them for travel, then. Lauren and Jem had stood silent through the whole exchange, gawking at the money before them. More than 1,100 of gold weights. Before leaving the Birchwood, Lauren would have laughed at the thought of a single person owning that much wealth. Since then, of course, she had learned that some people had much more. But to see such riches laid out before her and know they were her own, she suddenly understood the gold lust in the tales of Bracken, the old storyteller who came to her village in her youth. They closed the lockboxes, and Lauren put 6 of them in Midnight's saddlebags. The other 5 went into the bags of the horse that Jem and Annis shared. They ate an early midday meal and rode from the city just before noon. Lauren feared that with the news from last night they might face extra scrutiny at the gate, but the guards waved them on. A good thing that, said Uzo, after they had passed well beyond earshot of the gate. I do not think it will be wise to flash our mystic badges any longer. Why, said Jem. The mystics have no quarrel with Dorsey, said Jem. Uzo scoffed. Do you think our order is free from the politics of the 9 kingdoms? Every mystic vows to serve no king but the High King, and now the Dorsians have declared the High King their enemy. Lauren glanced over her shoulder. What about the mystics in Bertram itself, she said. Are they not in danger? Shion and Uzo looked at each other uneasily, but this time it was Shion who spoke. I do not think so. Not so far from the capital. Not yet. Our holdings in Bertram are strong, and the Dorsians would be loath to assault them without a pressing reason. As long as the mystics do not take overt action against Dorsey, they should be safe. In Danfon itself, things may be different. That thought remained with Lauren for a long while. She knew the mystics had a presence in almost every great city across the 9 kingdoms. A castle here, a fortress there, sometimes in the heart of the population, sometimes in long-distant wilderness. But now the mystics in Dorsey were cut off from the rest of their order, and now that she thought about it, so were the mystics in Dulmoon. For 3 months now they had been isolated in a kingdom at war with the High King. If the mystics here now faced a brittle peace, could such peace have lasted so long in the very heart of a treacherous nation? Some referred to the mystics as the 10th kingdom. Many in their ranks had held great power before donning the red cloak, and if unified, that power would be no less than that of a true king. Yet Lawrence saw now that their power was scattered all across the 9 lands. It would be near impossible to consolidate it in order to achieve any end, great or small. Sometimes she was not sure of her own feelings towards the mystics. Some, like Jordell, served high ideals. Others, like Uzo and Shion, were honorable enough soldiers, willing to follow orders and fight for the greater good. Lauren had met others who were self-serving and hungry for power, but she did not relish the thought of small pockets of the red-cloaked warriors suddenly finding themselves isolated in rebellious kingdoms, there to wait until the king finally decided to eliminate them. It was only a short ride from the gates of Bertram to the King's Road, and from there they pushed their horses as hard as they dared. They ate their supper in the saddle, only stopping once the sun was well below the horizon and its last light faded from the sky. The hard ride brought them to the beginning of the Moon's Light Pass, the southern route that would take them through the mountains to Dorsey's northeastern reaches. The next morning they climbed into the great rocks themselves. As a section of the King's Road, the pass was well tended. The road was laid in stone, and in many places it went straight through the mountains themselves, where large clefts had been cut as if by a giant's axe. But it was a steep climb even so, and in some places the road had no choice but to cut back and forth, following the contours of the land. The mountains were beautiful in the last days of winter. The well-cleared road left the travelers a great deal of unused attention to study their mighty peaks and splendid valleys. It struck Lauren how different this mountain range could be at different points along its length. She had first seen the great rocks to the south, where they had ridden with Jordell. Those peaks were high, but they were somewhat gentle, and the summer sun had painted their gray cliffs and stones in hues of warm red. Then they had come to the great rocks in the north, searching for Damaris on the stronghold of Yawamba. There the mountains rose into the sky like knives, mighty and sheer, but still covered in green, for the jungle climbed even to their utmost heights. The range they rode through now was somewhere in the middle. Though the peaks had been tamed by human hands, they still stood proud and regal, and each was covered in snow like a robe of office. Indeed, when the sun bathed the slopes in amber at the beginning and ending of the day, Lauren was reminded of the white and gold of the High King, and she wondered if this might be the place from which those colors had been drawn. The day's end found them in the town of Midgar, which meant Waystop in the ancient tongue of Dulmoon, from the days when Rena Sunmane had conquered this land in the name of the first High King. It was an entirely appropriate name, for the town had been built for the sole purpose of being a place for travelers to rest as they rode the Moon's Light Pass. There was a mystic stronghold just outside the town, a little farther up the slope from the mountains, as though it had been placed there to oversee the town. Lauren stared at it as they entered Midgar. The shape of the stronghold was all too familiar. They had seen one just like it in the southern Great Rocks. Jordell had told her that all ancient mystic strongholds were alike, so much so that he would know the placement of every stone within it. It was still disconcerting to see the truth of his words. They stopped at one of the town's more modest inns. Midgar had several, and for a moment Lauren had the wild thought of staying at the finest of them. She had a great deal of newfound coin, after all, but she doused the thought in an instant. She had riches, yes, but she would not hold them long if she spent them too freely. So she guided the party towards the meanest-looking inn, which was called the Jolly Rat, though Weil protested mightily. I have visited Midgar before, and I can tell you the Jolly Rat is aptly named, he said. The rats are so jolly because they are well fed, and that is because the innkeeper lets them run freely through her kitchen in the guests' rooms. Let us board at the Silver Boar instead. If they have the same cook as the last time I was here, you will never taste finer boiled carrots in all your life. We stay at the Jolly Rat, said Lauren, though you may go and eat your supper at the Silver Boar if you wish, and pay for it as well. Weil sniffed. I am no beggar who must accept free meals, especially when they are served in such a place. I will indeed eat at the Silver Boar, and stop by the Blue Door afterwards into the bargain. Lauren flushed. The Blue Door was known across the Nine Lands as the sign of a house of lovers. She had not thought there would be one here so far from any city. What you do is your own business as long as you use your own coin, but since I would rather not leave you alone to do it, take Shiyun with you. You can buy her dinner as well. Weil scowled. Shiyun smirked at him, but then she shook her head at Lauren. If I may make a suggestion, Nightblade, send Uzo instead. He will be just as fine as a guard, and he would likely get some use out of the Blue Door, whereas I would not. Indeed, Uzo looked surprisingly eager. Lauren nodded at once. Of course. I'm sorry I did not think of it already, Uzo, after your service in Bertram. Uzo ducked his head. Do not trouble yourself, Nightblade, and thank you. Weil's expression had darkened still further at the prospect of paying for Uzo's lover as well as his dinner, but the smuggler took one last dark look at the Jolly Rat and turned on his heel, beckoning Uzo to follow him. Uzo threw a wink over his shoulder and followed. And went. With a little smile, Lauren watched them go before leading the others into the common room of the Jolly Rat. They quickly secured a room and stables and then bought dinner. Lauren thought it looked a bit meager, but nowhere near so bad as Weil had made it sound. Indeed, they had stayed in far worse places in their travels. Jem spoke up as they settled into their seats. Is it wise to let Weil go off, do you think? If he puts his mind to it, he might yet evade Uzo. He will not, said Annis. The prospect of the reward at the end of this journey will keep him close. Indeed, Lauren, you offered him more than I would have. A royal pardon is not something easily obtained. Lauren shrugged. I am not wise in all the politics of the Nine Kingdoms, yet it seems to me that whatever small mischief Weil has gotten up to here in Dorsey, it pales in comparison to the threat of the necromancer and the rebellion. If he can help us deliver Damaris and even the kingdom of Dorsey, I do not doubt that Her Majesty will grant him a life as an honest merchant. And if she does, she will have removed a smuggler who traffics in illegal goods, said Shiyun. He may even begin to pay taxes on his dealings, furthering the king's and the High King's might. It is the wisest of generals who can defeat an enemy by turning them into a servant. Lauren laughed at that, as did Jem, but Annis did not join them and now stared morosely at her meal. Lauren saw it and leaned over, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. Anna, she said, is something wrong? The girl's head jerked up and she shook her head too quickly. Not at all, she said. My thoughts are far away. Forgive me. Lauren frowned. She glanced briefly at the others around the table and then back to Annis. Come, let us take a walk together. No, we should eat, said Annis. Yet you have scarcely touched your food, said Lauren, pointing into the girl's bowl. Stand and walk before I am forced to drag you. They rose and left Chet, Jem, and Shun to their meal, fetching their cloaks and stepping out into the wintry night. Annis gasped at the chill and rubbed her arms. Step lively, said Lauren. You should get the blood flowing. It will loose whatever words you have bottled up inside yourself. It is no great matter, truly, said Annis. I know I am only being foolish, yet I still find myself shocked that Dorsey joined the rebellion. It is difficult to imagine a greater disaster for the High King, and it was orchestrated by my own mother. Your mother's misdeeds are not yours, and they never have been, said Lauren. I know that, yet we are in pursuit of her, and I have bent all my thought towards finding her. I should have seen this coming. Anna spoke faster and faster. But then again, should I have been able to predict it? Why should I? My mother is much older, and it seems infinitely more cunning. I have begun to think this is a fool's errand, the two of us chasing her across the kingdom, I mean. It seems that we run off on one mad course of action after another. Yes, it seems like the right thing to do every time, but what if we are only making things worse? Lauren put her hand on Annis's shoulder and squeezed. Not hard, but just enough to get her attention. Annis's words cut off at once, and she looked up. Lauren smiled gently. I'm sorry, said Annis. Babbling is a hard habit to break. You are being too hard on yourself as usual, said Lauren. You're being too harsh with yourself as usual, said Lauren. It is as you said. Damaris must have been planning this rebellion for some time. If we had not followed her to Uwamba and then to Dorsey, this still would have happened. And furthermore, she would be sitting safe in a stronghold of power, one that even the High King's armies might have had trouble removing her from. Mayhap our actions have forced her hand sooner than she wished to reveal it. Her strength now, and the strength of the Dortian rebels, is likely less than it would have been if we had not remained on her trail, nipping at her heels. Annis ran her hands through her hair, mussing it for a moment before pulling it back into place. You are right, of course, and these things are what I keep telling myself. But after such a long pursuit with nothing to show for it, I am becoming a bit discouraged. At those words, she glanced back at the inn. Lauren frowned, and then she thought of Jem sitting inside. She shook her head and wrapped an arm around Annis's shoulder, pulling her close. It would be good to have some sort of victory, said Lauren. I agree with you there. Let us hope that one is just around the next corner, or the next turn in the mountain pass, as it may be. Annis looked up at her and smiled. Thank you, Lauren. But now let us go inside and finish our meal before I either starve or freeze to death. I am not sure which would come first, and I have no wish to learn. Lauren chuckled and led her back inside the Jolly Rat. Chapter 19! Gonna take a quick break. Back in a few. Hey, we're back. Oh, chili. Oh, I was just reminded I have to go ask my wife something. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. Thanks for the follow, stupid hand Vlad. Welcome to the stream. Chapter 10. On the third day of their journey, they rode down the other side of the moon's light pass to find the city of Danfon laid out before them. Dorsey's capital had been built at the very feet of the great rocks. There, the river Marsden spilled from the foothills, winding its way north and east until it joined the Sky Tongue to form the border between Dorsey and Feldamar. The Marsden flowed throughout the year, for winter's chill was too weak to tame its mighty current this far north. It's pretty awesome. Danfon sprawled wide across the landscape on both sides of the river, and beyond its walls, farmlands reached almost to the horizon. Lauren had traveled the countryside east of here and knew it for a brown and arid place, but here the soil was rich and loamy, and it gave the capital a fine yield. They paused as they reached the final bend in the pass out of the mountains. Now they stood on a flat place in the land that seemed built for the sole purpose of observing the city, which seemed only a stone's throw away. The streets, like Bertram's, were laid out in neat rows that crisscrossed each other in a simple pattern. Near the western walls was the king's palace. Its red tile roofs were free from snow, either because they were swept by attendants or because their height left them more open to sunlight. The tiles shone proud in the midst of the city, like a pattern of rubies set on a veil of white lace. Lauren was struck by a feeling both unsettling and all too familiar. She had seen the palace before. Her dream had not shown it from this angle, but still she knew it. And when she turned, she saw the great rock looming above her just the same. The world seemed to spin around her for a moment, and she clutched tight at the horn of Midnight's saddle. The mare blew a loud snort as though she sensed Lauren's disquiet. "Welcome to Danfon," said Weil. Despite the city's splendor, the smuggler looked at it with an upturned nose and a frown. "A city that I thought not to visit for a long time, if ever I returned here. We will ride around it to the river on the other side." That distracted Lauren from her thoughts, and she frowned at him. "The east? Why?" Weil arched an eyebrow at her. "Did you not hire me to sneak you into the city unnoticed? There are secret ways that only I and others like me know of, and I mean to lead you to them, but they cannot be traveled on horseback." Boof. To the east is a town called Yinkang, and there I know a man who will care for our steeds while we see to our business in the capital. Is Yinkang on the map? It is. Excellent. "We should reach the town just after nightfall, and there I suggest we remain for the night. We should enter the city overnight," said Lauren. Doubtless we will attract less notice that way." But Anna shook her head. "The capital will be in turmoil after the death of King Jun," said the girl. "This new king, Wojin, will have established a curfew. We will attract more notice if we are on the streets after dark." Those are great emojis. Clam Taco channel. Oh, man. Just so, agreed Weil. And as for the secret passages, we are no less likely to be seen there after nightfall than during the day. Thieves and scoundrels, for so I am often called, very unjustly, do not keep the same hours as more honest folk. After they came down out of the mountains, Weil led them off the King's Road to a smaller course-way that curved through the farmlands. The plots of land were all sunken into the earth, and there were no people out working them. Lauren knew little of farming, but at home in the birchwood there were many crops that could be planted even in winter. The stillness was strange to her. What do they grow here, she said. Rice, mostly, said Weil. They will begin planting a bit late this year, for winter has lasted longer than it usually does. But the capital does not lack for food stores, and the king takes good care of his people when the seasons are unkind. He paused for a moment and shrugged. Or at least King June did. I know very little of Wojin's temperament, nor how he will care for his citizens. Lauren scowled and her hands tightened on the reins. I am surprised to learn that the Dorshan king cared so much for his own subjects. He gave little enough thought to the suffering of other kingdoms. Best emojis. Weil glanced at her. You are no admirer of June, I take it. I did not know his name until only recently, said Lauren. Yet if he was the king of Dorsey, then no, I had no love for him. You refer to Welmont, I assume, said Weil. Lauren jerked in her saddle and looked at him. Weil nodded. Your Selvan accent gives it away, and that is something you should try to rid yourself of, by the by. It is always better when others cannot guess everything about you simply from the way you sound. Why does everyone insist I have an accent, growled Lauren. How can I rid myself of it if I cannot even hear it? Surely you can recognize that your voice is different from mine and from the Yerrin girls, said Weil. Even the boy's voice is harder to place than yours. In any case, you do yourself no favors with your concern for Dorsey's border squabbles. The Battle of Welmont was little more than an over-enthusiastic war holiday for our great king. Former king, I should say. You say those words easily, said Jem quietly. His gaze was far away. But we were in the city when it was attacked. It was far from a holiday. Weil only shrugged, increasing Lauren's irritation. Oh, man. We're just displaying all of the best emojis today. Battles rarely seem so to those who experience them, which is why I make a habit of avoiding them. But all manner of mad rumors have been spun about Welmont since that attack. Something happened there, they say, that has turned the greatest heads in all the 9 lands. Annis arched an eyebrow. I presume you include yourself in that company? Weil shook his head quickly. Oh no, dear girl. I count myself an honest man of great wit, but I am aware of my own insignificance. I am no mighty figure in the affairs of the 9 kingdoms, nor would I wish to be so. A life of good food and good wine and some little excitement is enough for me. Oh, I gotta change that timer, don't I, now that Yerrin is on pre-order. Hello. This is a proofread. This is the very final proofread before the book publishes in just a few days. Link changed. Yeah. Pretty exciting. Ugh. Always love putting out a new book. A life of good food and good wine and some little excitement is enough for me. Lauren did not wish to speak further of Wellmont, but Jem turned to the smuggler with interest. What did you mean before? He said. What happened at Wellmont? Weil shrugged. Rumors and speculation fly, but the truth is not so easily found. It seems that certain powerful parties have been trying to conceal the truth of the matter, and that is most interesting. I do not suppose you noticed anything unusual while you were there. Other than the battle itself, said Jem. That was unusual enough for me. Enough of this talk, said Lauren. I do not wish to hear more about Wellmont. As you wish, said Weil. The party fell silent for a time. They followed the road in its wide loop around Danfon to where it met the Marsden half a league to the east. There they found a great construct of stone and iron with many great pipes sticking out of the river bank. Many great pipes sticking out of the riverbank to empty into the waters, pouring a steady stream of refuse. The smell of it struck them hard even in the cold air. Jem turned away and pinched his nose, shoulders heaving. There you have it, said Weil. The secret passage. Danfon's sewers are some of the best in the 9 kingdoms, and one can get entirely lost inside them, which means, of course, that it is easy to avoid being found. Sewers, muttered the boy. I had hoped I had escaped sewers forever when I left Cabris. Weil laughed and shook his head. For those who skirt the King's Law, sewers are like a second home. You should enter a new line of work if you seek to avoid them. Uzo glared at the smuggler. We are the King's Law. Weil gave Lauren a broad wink. Of course you are. He turned them away from the sewers and took them back to the road, which went east for a ways before turning south to reach the little town of Yinkang. The sun had disappeared over the great rocks by the time they reached it, and twilight had set in. Yinkang had no wall, and so they came unchallenged to its streets. Weil took them straight to the inn. It was a small, nondescript building with only one floor, smaller than the stable at its rear. Many travelers like us leave their mounts here while they do business in the city, said Weil. This place was built to take better care of horses than humans. The innkeeper, a spindly man with a thin beard, took their coin without comment and directed them to 3 rooms where they spent the night. They woke before dawn, dragging Jem from bed as usual, and set off for the capital. It was an hour's brisk walk to the sewers. A small staircase led down from the riverbank to the opening of the pipes, but there was no platform leading directly inside. They had to take a few precarious hops from the end of the staircase along the water's edge before they could get a handhold on one of the pipe's edges. One by one, they pulled themselves up and into the dark tunnel. Lauren helped Annis make the climb, but Jem leaped up by himself, eschewing her help. His foot slipped as he came down, and his shoe came up, and his shoe... His foot slipped, and his shoe came down in the sludge with a splash. Ugh, he cried, lifting his foot up. What did the people of this city eat? That smells 10 times worse than the sewers of Cabris. Weil flashed an easy smile. We spice our foods well in Dorsey, and nowhere more so than in the capital. Alas, our concern has never been what some foreigner will think of the smell of our shit. Annis blushed at the smuggler's frank words. Weil seemed not to notice, and he led them on through the sewers without a pause. The passages twisted and turned, intersecting with each other in such a confusing manner that Lauren was lost almost at once. Soon the smell of the tunnels became little more than a background sensation in her mind. She focused on keeping one hand on the wall and her feet out of the muck that ran just below the narrow walkway. After a time, she became aware of a noise. It grew steadily the farther they walked, a low, murmuring hum that echoed gently from the stone walls around them. Soon she placed it. It was the sound of many voices, human and animal both, as well as the low rumbling of wagon wheels. They were under the city. Have we passed beyond the walls? Said Lauren. When will we surface? Soon enough, said Weil, but I do not want to lead you back into the sunlight in the middle of some busy thoroughfare. It would not do to have King Wojin's soldiers catch sight of us climbing out of the sewers in the middle of the street. There are back alleys where no one will observe us, and the smell will be worse there, I imagine, grumbled Jem. Lauren shushed him. The smuggler was as good as his word, and soon he led them up a ladder that took them into the open air. They had been in the sewer for hours by that time, and Lauren gasped at the smell of cool, fresh air again. She could almost taste it on her tongue, and it seemed sweeter than honey. Weil paused for a moment to get his bearings. There is a place not far from here where we may settle in, he said. The innkeeper always has a warm bath ready with perfumes on hand, and she knows better than to ask me very many questions. They came to the inn shortly, and Lauren paid for their rooms. Some of the patrons in the common room turned their noses up as the party walked through, and the innkeeper offered them baths without being asked. They took turns, for there were only 4 tubs, but Lauren commanded them to hurry. I wish we had not spent a night in Yinkang, she told them, and I want to make up for it by getting straight to work. I would rather not rest until we have spent at least some time in the city learning what we can. Mm. Forgot that I'm supposed to be entering names in my pronunciation guide as I go along. Who else? Who else? Who else? Ham. We added ham already. I think that's all the places so far. Names and places. Yeah. All right. After they were refreshed, they ate a quick meal and planned their next move. Weil had many contacts in the city, but he did not think it wise to bring a large party with him when he went to visit them. Take Shion with you, said Lauren. Weil put a hand to his breast, frowning. Do you not trust me? I would neither run off on my own nor betray you, for I have always been an honest businessman. Of course, said Lauren, raising an eyebrow. My assurance is, smuggler, that she will only be there for your own protection. His smile grew somewhat forced, but he bowed gracefully in his chair. Of course. How thoughtful of you. The rest of us will get a feel for the city's mood, said Lauren. Chet and Uzo, visit some taverns and inns, any place that the city folk gather to have a drink. Uzo's in there, right? Yep. See what they think about the new king and whether or not anyone has noticed the presence of the family Yerrin within the city walls. I will take Annis and Jem with me and visit shops. We can tell them we are gathering supplies to go on a journey. Let us try to get a few tongues wagging while we barter for prices. Chapter 10, done! Chapter 11. With their plan formed, they quickly finished their food and set off into the streets. Lauren took Annis and Jem to the marketplace near the inn. They had lodged in one of the city's finer districts, which must have been a deliberate choice of wiles. Bertram? Oh, didn't add Bertram. The smuggler enjoyed a good bed and good wine. Now they passed between stores with fine luxury crafts displayed in windows, which were often paned with glass and framed by ornamented wrought iron. Annis took the lead at once and led them towards the first shop, a tailor. Just before they reached the door, Lauren paused and turned to her. Barter hard for everything we purchase, she said, and if the price is too high, let us take our business elsewhere. We are only here for information, and it looks like the goods here are expensive. Annis tilted her head. We will have to spend some coin, Lauren. We have plenty of it now, and a merchant's tongue never wags so freely as when their purse is being filled. We do have coin, but that was not the case a few days ago, and I did not enjoy it, said Lauren. Our gold may have to last us a long while. We do not have an endless supplies of mage stones to sell, after all. Annis arched an eyebrow at her. Do you think I would waste our funds? I am a Yerrin, Lauren. I can buy information without emptying our purse. My mother taught me that much, at least. Oh, let her handle it, Lauren, said Jem. I should so love a new suit of clothes. Lauren frowned. You will only get them filthy. Indeed, I think you know some spell to coat your garments with grime, for it seems to happen instantly. Jem scowled. Annis giggled at them both. Trust me, Lauren, she said. This is why you have brought me along, after all. Lauren sighed. Very well, of course I trust you, and I brought you because you are my friend, not just because you are useful. Annis smiled and led the way into the shop. Inside, they found the tailor to be a man both portly and incredibly short, a finger shorter even than Annis. At first he looked at them with disdain, though they had just bathed, their clothes were still worn from long leagues on the road, and were modest besides. But when Annis flashed a pair of gold weights in her palm, his demeanor changed at once. Of course it would be my pleasure to serve you, he said, beaming a smile. Do you want new clothes for further travel, or something a bit more elegant for functions within the city? Annis eyed the fine gowns displayed on mannequins along the walls, but after a moment she turned from them with a quiet sigh. Indeed, we mean to ride from the city soon, she said, though it pains me to refuse such dresses as yours. Such fine craftsmanship is rare to see, though I should have expected it from an establishment as well kept as this. The merchant's smile grew still wider, and he bowed. You learned your manners too well, for they compel you to be overly generous. Mine is a humble shop, but let me see what insufficient garb I can clad you in. My only hope is that you remember this mean little place with some fondness. Shelves of fine cloth ran along the shop's back walls, and there were more standing shelves in the center. He led them along the rows, bouncing on the balls of his feet and pointing out this or that weave and color, inviting them to feel the textures. Lauren was glad she had just bathed, or she would have feared to smudge dirt all over the bolts of fine fabric. Annis appraised everything in the shop with an expert eye. Lauren remembered how they met almost a year ago when she had snuck into a Yerrin caravan just south of the Birchwood. The wagons had been filled with fabrics, for the Yerrin's chief trade was textiles, at least on the surface. Lauren did not know much about clothing, but she guessed that the Yerrins trafficked in only the best, which must have been why Annis's interest alighted only on the shop's most precious samples. At last Annis selected a few different materials. Once she had, the tailor took them back to the mannequins. He offered suggestions of various cuts, pointing to some riding dresses for her and a suit of clothes for Jem. The clothes were far too large for the boy, but the tailor promised he could deliver the same look on Jem's slighter frame. And for you, he said, turning to Lauren, a riding dress as well, mayhap, or a shirt and trousers? Lauren balked. Me? I do not require anything new, she said. Oh, yes, you do, said Annis. She pursed her lips, tapping them with a finger. But something quite different for her, I think. Not a dress, certainly, but not a suit like Jem's either. Here. She went to the back corner of the shop. There stood a mannequin in fine clothes that yet seemed entirely useful, somewhere between a peasant's garb meant for hard work on a hot day and a suit that a noble might wear. Lauren could see at once that the tunic and pants would be easy to move in, and yet they had an elegant sort of flair. There was also a vest with many stylish pockets that buttoned shut. The tailor turned to Lauren with wide eyes, and a little smile played at his lips. "Ah, I see it at once," he said. "Yes, of course. Perfect. And the material?" Annis took him back to the shelves. She must have anticipated this, for she immediately pointed out a few bolts of cloth that were all black or dark gray. But then she went to the next shelf over and pointed at a bolt of muted green velvet. "Trim it in this," she said, "for the eyes." Of course," said the merchant. To Lauren's surprise, he was very nearly bouncing in anticipation. "And might I suggest this for the inside of the vest? You will see only a flash of it when she moves, of course, but that will make all the difference." He put a hand hand on a bolt of satin, green as well, but closer in color to the sea. Annis gave a sharp clap, her eyes shining. Sky above it is perfect. Perhaps on the inside of the collar as well. The tailor snapped his fingers. Just so. It is the final piece to make it perfect. You have a fine judgment for this, my lady. I am further humbled by your presence in my modest place of business. Modest you may be, but not deservedly so, said Annis. From the pouch at her purse... From the pouch... She pulled 4 gold weights. These she placed in the tailor's hand, and then she deliberately pulled forth another and added it to the pile. I hope we can retrieve the clothing tomorrow. I would delay some other orders to ensure it, said the tailor, but your offer is far too generous. Yet Lauren noticed his fingers closed over the gold at once. Not at all, said Annis. For the quality I see here, I think I make a more than shrewd bargain. The tailor bowed lower than ever and drew them to the back of the shop to take their measurements. Annis went first, holding out her arms while he pulled out a ribbon and ran it along her limbs. She smiled as he did it, but then her brow furrowed for a moment. I do so hope the road is safe to the west, she said. What a shame it would be for our new garments to be endangered by bandits. The tailor frowned at that. Things are uncertain these days, to be sure. Annis nodded. Still, I am certain that King Wojan will maintain order. That drew a snort from the tailor, but he quickly suppressed it, and Lauren saw him look askance at Annis. He tried to pass it off by coughing quietly. It sounds so strange to say. Annis shook her head. King Wojan. My heart breaks for King June. I saw him once, you know. He was a good man. He was that, said the tailor fervently. It was my great pleasure to make clothing for many members of the royal family, though never King June himself, of course. I was invited to the palace more than once, and though I never had the honor of meeting his grace, I saw him on occasion. He was a regal man, and so handsome. Not like... Well, I mean to say that we will not see his like again for a long time. I can only imagine your sorrow at his passing, said Annis. Yet at least his kinsman sits the throne. That is a blessing, I suppose, the tailor grumbled. And Wojan has what he wants in the end. That is all for you, dear. Young master, if you would. Jem stepped into Annis's place, his chest puffing out at the title of young master. Annis drew aside, her eyes widening. Do you mean to say that Wojan desired the throne already? She said. Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. It was the voice of a girl sharing some bit of scandalous gossip with a close friend. The tailor responded in kind, looking over his shoulder at her and giving a wink. That is the most ill-kept secret in Dorsey, and mayhap all the 9 kingdoms. Wojan was the youngest brother of King June's mother, Min, of course. Of course, said Annis, nodding as though everyone knew it. Lauren hid a smile. Well, everyone in Dorsey knows Wojan resented the throne passing to his nephew when Min passed away. Later, when King June's son Senlin was born, they say Wojan flew into a rage that lasted for days. The tailor sighed and shook his head. Still, that was a long time ago, long before King June met his end, at the hands of agents of the High King, or so they say. He snorted again, louder this time, and rolled his eyes. Annis's eyes grew still wider. Do you not believe it, she said, her voice a sing-song. The tailor's eyes narrowed, and he paused before answering. The intrigues of palace life are far above my station, he said slowly. Keep your head from the clouds, lest it be removed, or so they say. Yet I have my doubts. A thought struck Lauren all at once. And what of those others, she said. They say Wojan has the support of some foreigners, recently arrived here at the capital. I heard the family name, but it escapes me. Yamin? Yarvin? The tailor went still. Yerrin? The family Yerrin? Lauren snapped her fingers. That was it, Yerrin. Did they not arrive here only just ahead of King June's death? I had not heard that. The tailor pursed his lips. I wonder. Over the tailor's shoulder, Annis gave Lauren a small smile, but she also shook her head. Lauren shrugged and turned to look out the shop's window. I do not mean to suggest anything untoward, of course. I am a stranger to this city, after all. I only repeat what I have heard. The tailor went silent after that, and Annis deftly turned their conversation to talk of lighter matters. But after they left the tailor's shop, she fixed Lauren and Jem with a look. That was most telling, she said. If the first shopkeeper we met was willing to whisper of such rumors, that means many in the city must secretly believe them. And what a stroke of genius, Lauren, to plant the idea of my family's involvement. Dorshans are not fond of foreigners meddling with their kingdom. Word will spread, and when it returns to us, we may learn something of my family's plans. Indeed, said Jem quickly. I had thought of doing the same thing, of course, but you beat me to it. Of course you did, said Lauren, arching an eyebrow. But what can we do with such information? Anna shook her head. Nothing yet, but it is a start. Let us go to a few more shops and see what else we may learn. As it turned out, there was little else. They went to a cobbler, a carpenter, a steelsmith, and some other little shops of various trinkets and oddities. Most of the owners seemed to hold a similar opinion to the tailor, but none expressed it so plainly. Lauren wondered if that might be because they did not spend their coins so freely at the other shops, but she did not encourage Annis to spend more. The girl clearly knew what she was doing. A few hours before sundown, they made their way back to the inn. Uzo and Chet sat in the common room, and both had clearly had a few cups of wine. Chet's nose and cheeks were ruddy, and when Lauren asked Uzo how they had fared, the mystic blinked 3 times before answering. "We did well enough," he said slowly. He leaned closer and dropped his voice. "Certainly there is some disagreement in the city about Wojin taking the throne. No one was willing to speak very plainly, but there was much to be read in their quiet words and sidelong glances. It seems King Jun is greatly missed." "It was much the same with us," said Lauren. "That is good for our purposes, I think. If we faced a happy populace with great love for their liege lord, I think it would be harder to seek information about the Yerrins." "I find myself ever more curious about the Senate," said Annis. "If the kingdom does not support King Wojin, the Senate may be persuaded to take action against him. Hopefully Weil's contacts will know something of that. I am interested to hear what he has to say when he returns." Lauren nodded, and then she noticed Jem sitting very still, his eyes darting furtively over her shoulder. She barely stopped herself from following his gaze. "Jem," she said quietly, "what is it?" He frowned. "Mayhap it is nothing. Only there's a girl over there. No, do not turn and look, any of you. She seems very interested in us. I have caught her looking at our table often." Lauren's stomach lurched. What if it was some spy of Damaris's? That seemed impossible. The merchant could not have heard about their presence in Danfont so soon. Yet Lauren had learned long ago that the Yerrins could not be underestimated. She nodded firmly. "I will fetch us some wine," she said. The others nodded. Lauren stood and made her way towards the bar. As she did, she stole a surreptitious glance at the girl. She wore the simple garb of a Dortian peasant, loose pantaloons and a tunic that gathered at the wrists. She wore a wide-brimmed hat like many in the city, and her hair was black, as was common here, yet her features were a bit softer than a typical Dortian's, and her freckles were unusual in this kingdom. The girl did not look up. Indeed, she studiously turned her gaze away, but Lauren sensed attention in her. Lauren bought a bottle of wine and returned to the table. "She does not look dangerous, at least," she said. "If she is a spy, what then?" "We should capture her," said Annis. "She may be able to help us find my mother, if indeed that is who sent her." "Agreed," said Lauren. She gave Uzo a quick look, "but we must be careful. We need her alive." Uzo rolled his eyes and nodded. "Very well," said Lauren. "Everyone come with me." She rose, leaving her cup and the wine. Quickly she went towards the inn's front door, and the rest hastened to follow. Just before stepping outside, Lauren saw the girl shoot up from her table. Lauren darted to the corner of the inn and directed the others to file around the side of the building. She went last, waiting until the girl started to emerge through the front door. She timed it so that the last flap of her cloak was just visible as the girl stepped outside. Quickly she directed the others to hide in the alley's dark corner. She herself stood behind a stack of crates. Soft footsteps sounded from the street. Lauren drew a throwing knife from her belt. The girl stepped into view. Lauren threw the dagger but aimed wide. The blade plunged into the wall near the girl's face, making her jump. Uzo pounced, snatching her arm and clapping a hand over her mouth. Lauren stepped up beside him and slowly tugged her dagger free to sheathe it. "Hello," she said amiably. You seem most interested in our little party. Why?" The girl only stared at them with wide, terrified eyes. Uzo withdrew his hand slowly, ready to replace it if she tried to scream, but the girl made no sound at all. Lauren sighed. "How long have you been following us?" That made the girl glance at Uzo and Chet. "I was not following you. I was following them." "Fair enough," said Lauren. "Why?" I heard them asking questions about Wojin." "And do you work for him?" said Lauren. "Or do you work for the family Yerrin?" The girl's brow furrowed. "Who?" Lauren glanced at Annis. The reaction seemed genuine. Mayhap the girl was a skilled liar, but Lauren did not think so. Annis gave a barely perceptible shake of her head. "What is your name?" said Lauren. The girl's voice faltered. She drew herself up straighter. She had some spirit then, and not just a pretty face. "I am Caradwin, of the family Ogun. Why are you in Danfon?" Lauren cocked her head, unable to keep herself from a small smile. "That is a proud question to ask ones who hold you captive." Caradwin blushed, but she did not relent. "Are you here to help the king?" "We do not know Wojin." Caradwin shook her head quickly. "Wojin is not the true king." Anna stepped forwards. "Yet he sits upon the throne, for King Jun is dead." The girl's eyes widened and darted around nervously. Sky above, thought Lauren. She gently pushed Uzo aside. He moved, as somewhat reluctantly, and Lauren stepped within a pace of Caradwin. From her cloak pocket she pulled her writ from the High King. "Can you read?" Caradwin stared for a moment before nodding slowly. Lauren handed her the writ. Caradwin opened it and read it. Lauren saw the color drain from her face and then come rushing back in a flush. "You serve the High King," she said. "I hoped, but I could scarcely believe. And now I ask again," said Lauren. "Why did you follow my friends?" Caradwin seemed to steel herself, and she drew up even straighter than before. "King Jun was not killed," she said. "He is still alive, and if you truly serve the High King, I will take you to him." Dun, dun, dun! Another chapter bites the dust. And another comes on, and another comes on. Another one bites the dust. Hey, gonna get you too. Chapter 12. Oh, God. Oh. After they had recovered from their shock, Lauren sent Jem to check the inn, but he returned to report that Weil and Shun had not yet returned. At first, Lauren wanted to wait for them, but Annis counseled against that. The city has a curfew now, she said. Nightfall is close at hand, and we will have a harder time of it if we do not go at once. And I do not think you should go at all, said Chet. If this is a trap, you will be in grave danger. Send one of us as an intermediary instead. It is not a trap, said Caradwin, frowning. And besides, I am the intermediary, said Lauren, though I think you are right in one respect. Not all of us should go. I will take Annis. The rest of you remain here in case something goes wrong. I'm coming as well, of course, said Jem, but you knew that already. Lauren sighed and turned to Chet and Uzo. Wait here for Weil and Shun to return and tell them what has happened. We will send for you as soon as we know it is safe. Yes, Nightblade, said Uzo. Chet's eyes were troubled. I do not like this. Lauren gave him a smile. This could be the best news we have had in some time. If June remains alive, he can doubtless help us to get to Damaris. I must at least try. He turned away. I see that, but please, return as quickly as you may. Lauren nodded. She had to stop herself from reaching out to take his hand. In the back of her mind, a voice whispered, he did not insist on coming with you. Is this when he plans to leave? She forced the thought away and turned to Caradwin. After you. Caradwin nodded and raised her hood before leading them into the street. Lauren and the children did the same as they passed through the crowds. They made their way south and west, and soon they had come very close to the place where the river entered the city. Not far away was the palace itself, but Caradwin turned from it and took them due west. Here the homes were all grand and towering, with multiple floors and little courtyards walled off from the rest of the city. This must be where the mightiest families lived. It had been the same on the High King's seat in the other great cities Lauren had visited. Power gathered to power and wealth to wealth. Soon they came to a manor with a hipped roof and two great wings stretching forth from either side of the front door. Surrounding it was no stone wall, but only a wrought iron gate. Guards watched them as they went around the side. Two more guards stood at the smaller rear entrance. When Caradwin threw back her hood, they nodded in greeting. Welcome back, said one of the guards, but who are these with you? Friends, said Caradwin. They are here to help the mistress's special guest. The guard looked at her companion. He shrugged, and she turned back. We shall have to send word. Caradwin nodded. Of course. The second guard left to deliver the message. Caradwin stood back, folding her arms to keep warm. Lauren appraised the manor. Whose home is this? Caradwin glanced at her and then at the home. She is a merchant. Her name is Yushan Ying. Her name is Yushan of the family Ying. She remains loyal too. She paused to look around, but the street was empty save for the guard. To King Jun. She has helped us conceal him since Wojin's betrayal. Is she trustworthy? Said Annis. Wojin knows the king is alive, of course, and I imagine he has offered a considerable sum for his capture. I imagine he has, but we have heard no word of it, said Caradwen. It is not exactly something he can publicly declare, since his right to the throne depends on his grace being dead already. Soon the second guard returned, and he gave the first a curt nod. She opened the gate and motioned them all inside, and Caradwen took them in through the manor's service entrance. Just inside, they met the merchant Yushan. She was tiny and fat, her round head balanced on her round body like a snowman's. As Lauren and the others shook the snow from their clothing, she took them in with sharp eyes. Well met. I'm Yushan of the family Ying. I was told you were here to help, and to receive help in return, said Lauren. We serve the High King Enelin. Yushan's eyes flashed. I trust those who are here in my employ, but even my trust only goes so far. I would ask you not to speak so plainly, not of whom you serve, nor of anything you might see while you are here. Absolute discretion is the only thing that has kept my special guest alive so far. Do you bear any proof that you are who you say you are? Lauren produced her writ, and Yushan scanned it quickly, but her hard look softened not a whit. It looks to be in order, she said, yet I still find myself suspicious. We only sent for aid a few days ago. How did you respond so quickly? That is easily answered, said Annis. We did not respond at all, but were traveling on other business when we heard of the turmoil in the capital. We came to Danfon with no idea that your special guest was alive, for we pursued another goal entirely. Yushan sniffed. That has the ring of truth to it. Very well. Follow me, but be warned. I have guards aplenty, and not only the ones you can see. You will not come too close to my special guest, or they will cut you down. The fact that 2 of you are children will not stay their hands. Children, said Jem, lifting his chin. I would wager I have seen more battles and traveled more miles than you have. Lauren slapped his shoulder hard, but to her surprise, Yushan's face finally cracked into a smile. I like you, boy, said the merchant. Come, then. She snatched Jem's hand and drew his arm into her own as she led them into the manor. Jem looked back at Lauren in a small panic as she forced him along, but Lauren only smiled at him and shrugged. Caradwen walked beside Lauren and Annis as Yushan took them to the rear entry hall into the kitchen, and then opened the door to a staircase leading down. At the bottom of the staircase was a pantry with shelves along the walls, but no one waited within. Lauren's hackles rose, fearing a trap. Yushan turned to them. Caradwen, if you would, my bones are old. Caradwen nodded and went forwards to one of the shelves. She knocked on the side of it, thrice and then twice. After a long moment's pause, 4 knocks sounded from the other side. Caradwen squatted and took one end of the shelf, heaving it from its place. Let me help, said Lauren. She seized the shelf, and Caradwen gave her a grateful smile that made her freckles dance. They swung the shelf out together. Behind the shelf was the small doorway that Lauren had to stoop to get through. A chamber lay beyond, with rugs on the floor and chairs and a table in the center. But the room was empty. Lauren wondered briefly who had knocked on the back of the shelf, but then Yushan led them through this chamber to another door. This one she opened without knocking, and inside they found their prize. The chamber into which the door opened was far larger and grander than the first. Leading off from it were 4 more doors, but Lauren had eyes only for the people in the room. 2 guards stood before the party, clad in armor of leather and chain. They had their hands on the thin swords at their belts, but they had not yet drawn them. Behind them was a larger man with a short beard whose hair was cut close to his scalp, revealing a long scar that ran back from his forehead. But behind them all was a man who Lauren knew at once must be King Jun. The king was not as tall as she might have guessed, certainly not as tall as any of his guards, but he had an imperious air that commanded attention. It was not only in the immaculate cut of his hair nor in the fine robes that he wore, though Lauren guessed they were worth more than all the cloth in the whole tailor shop she had visited that day. Nor was it in his eyes, though they were piercing and wise in equal measure. It was the way he held himself, the subtle pose of his body that somehow elevated him above the others in the room. Lauren had seen such presence before. The High King Enelin was much the same. She almost felt compelled to take a knee. But then she thought of Wellmont, and her thoughts soured. She inclined her head instead. Your Grace? King Jun did not answer. Instead, the man with the long scar stepped forth. And who are you? I am Lauren of the family Nelda, Nightblade of the High King. Lauren pulled the writ from her cloak. This letter bears her seal and will show I speak the truth. One of the foremost guards took the writ and handed it to his commander. He did not even glance at it before handing it back to King Jun. Lauren guessed that he could not read any better than she could. Jun took the writ and unfolded it. Each movement of his fingers was graceful, and he did not lose his poise even when he held the writ close to read it in the dim light of the room's candles. Erica! Hey! How you doing? After a moment his brows rose just a hair. He handed the writ back to his guard and it was passed forwards to Lorne. "Greetings, Nightblade," said King Jun. His voice was like silk, and though he was quieter than his guard had been, it only served to make them listen more closely. "Yea, outline." "You have my gratitude for coming to my city." Lauren bowed her head again on instinct, but she looked up at once to match his gaze. "Of course, your grace, but as we have told the Lady Ying, I did not know you were alive when I came to Danfon. It was only by fortune and by the wits of Caradwyn here that we discovered you at all." "I see," said June. "Why, then, did you come?" "We seek the merchant Damaris of the family Yerrin," said Lauren. "We believe it was she who backed Wojin in his bid for your throne." June frowned. "The family Yerrin. That makes some sense, I suppose." "Wojin is too much of a craven to plot rebellion without powerful aid. Though it should be noted that Damaris does not speak for all the Yerrins," said Anna. "She has been cut off from the family. Though she is dangerous enough on her own, we do not contend with all the might her clan could bring." The large guard with the scar glared at her. "You speak of we, but who are you, girl?" Annis gulped and lifted her chin. "I am Annis, of the family Yerrin, and I am Damaris's daughter." All three guards tensed, but June lifted a hand at once. "Stay yourselves. I have heard of this girl. She sundered herself from her mother, just as the rest of the family did. We have nothing to fear from her." Annis bowed her head. She had gone a shade paler, and her voice quivered. "Thank you, your grace." June inclined his head. "But that makes only two introductions. The Nightblade has a second companion." For a moment all was still, and then Jem jerked upright as he realized June was talking about him. "Oh, yes, I am Jem, of the family Noctis." He smiled weakly, and then after a moment he added, "Your grace." June pursed his lips. "Well met. And what purpose have you here?" Lorne was about to answer, but Jem stood forth and threw out his chest. He actually had the audacity to stare down his nose at the king. "Oh yes, a lot of riders hanging out around here. Stupid hand, Vlad." I'm just going to call you Vlad, but your name is amazing. I am the Nightblade's bodyguard." The room was dead silent for a moment. King June's guards stared at Jem, the corners of their lips twitching, while the large one with the scar frowned. But June showed no trace of a smile when he nodded. "Then you are most welcome. Loyal servants are worthy of the highest honor." Then he flapped his robes and took a seat on the chair behind him. "All the riders." "Very well. Whatever your reasons for coming to Danfon, Nightblade, I am glad you are here. I know that I can rely on your help to retake my throne, not only for my sake, but for the sake of my son." He waved an arm at Caradwyn. She bowed and went to one of the room's doors, ducking within for a moment. When she emerged, she had a young boy in tow. His resemblance to June was obvious at once, but where King June had an imperious and commanding air, the prince's eyes shone with curiosity as he looked at Lauren and her friends. He went to his father's side and then gave them all a deep bow. "My son, Prince Senlin of the family Fae," said June. "It is an honor to make your acquaintance," said Prince Senlin. Annis bowed in response. Jem stood stricken for a moment, his mouth hanging slightly open, before he did the same, but Lauren only inclined her head again. "Well met," she said. "But, your grace, I must correct you on one point. I was sent here on a mission from the High King. That mission has not changed. I am sure we all hope Damaris's capture will help you regain your rightful place as king, but her capture is my only purpose in the city." June frowned, barely a small turn of the lips, but it chilled the air in the room. Annis tensed and put a hand on Lauren's arm, but June spoke before she could. "As an envoy of the High King and a servant of her laws, you have a duty to help me restore order." "I know my duty," said Lauren. "Her Majesty herself was the one who gave it to me, your grace." The room was silent for a long moment, silent enough for Lauren to hear her own pulse in her ears. Her hands had formed fists without her realizing it. June studied her for a moment. Then his eyes widened, and he cocked his head. "Ah, I believe I understand. You are a girl of Selvin, are you not? I can hear it in your voice. No doubt you resent my kingdom's role in the Battle of Wellmont." Lauren frowned. "Who would not? I was in the city when your forces attacked. I watched its buildings burn and its citizens roast alive in flames. Not only the warriors, but the simple folk as well. And it is not the first time you have attacked Selvin without provocation." To her mounting irritation, June nodded. "Of course I understand, and who could blame you? Yet I am a king. It is part of my duty to bring prosperity to my people and to keep them happy." You do not even deny it." June spread his hands. "What would you have me deny? I have made war with the blessing of the Senate, and my people have prospered as a result." Annis held up a hand. "Mayhap we could turn our discussion to the matter of—" "Your people have prospered, have they?" said Lauren. "Yet some of them, many of them, died for it, and so have my people. If your son were on the battlements, I doubt you would think so lightly of war." "I have fought in war myself," said June. "When he is of age, Senlin will do the same. If his fate is to die, then that is as it shall be. The Nine Lands make widows and orphans of us all in the end." Lauren snorted and gave him a savage grin. "I have heard that wisdom before. It came from Damaris of the family Yerrin, who took your throne from you." June frowned. For the first time, Lauren thought she saw a flash of anger in his eyes. But Anna stepped forth and spoke loud enough to quell the conversation. If I may, she said, much has happened to us this day, Your Grace, and we are only recently come from the road. I must take a moment to speak with my compatriot. May we retire to the outer chamber for a moment only? June blew a small sigh through his nose. He looked away and waved a hand in dismissal. Lauren almost refused, but Annis took her arm and gripped it tight. Relenting, Lauren followed her into the sitting room outside, and Jem came at her heels. Thankfully, none of the bodyguards followed, nor did the merchant Yushan. Behind them, someone closed the door with a soft click. Annis fixed Lauren with a stern glare. You must control yourself. Lauren's nostrils flared and her jaw worked. She wanted to argue against Annis. In fact, she wanted to shout at her, but she restrained herself to terse words through gritted teeth. He speaks of death and killing the way a sane man speaks of cutting his fingernails. I know, said Annis. You know I agree with you. I, too, was at the Battle of Wellmont. Yet you must realize that June is not entirely in control of his own position. He must do as the people expect, and he cannot thwart the will of the Senate, for they would make things very difficult for him. Power comes with laws that June must obey, and one of the most important laws is that might always requires sacrifice. He does what his position forces him to do. Do you think that makes him blameless, said Lauren. Your mother taught you to be cruel and a killer, yet you rose above it. And many others have not, said Annis. It does not earn them forgiveness, yet it can give us some sort of understanding. Whatever Dorsey's faults, one of June's chief loyalties aligns with ours. He is a servant of the High King. Wojin serves only himself, and he is allied with my mother. Lauren held her gaze. What will happen if we put June back on the throne? Annis's mouth opened with a quick reply, but then she paused and sighed. In truth, one day he will likely make war on Selvin again. Yet Wojin will certainly do the same, and restoring June's kingship will stave off the greater war, the one between the High King and the Necromancer. June and the Senate may be dealt with later when Underrealm itself is no longer in danger. Indeed, if we survive this mess, I will help you fight him. Lauren turned away with a frown. Then she pushed past Annis and made for the door to June's chamber. Lauren! Annis reached for her arm, but Lauren threw off her hand and opened the door. The bodyguards looked up. The one with the scar had gone to June's side and was leaning over him, muttering. He straightened, and June turned to Lauren. She stopped at the front of the room, feet apart, hands at her sides. Contractions. I stick to the rule in prose as well, Erica, for the Underrealm books. Not in my other writing. I will return you to your throne, Your Grace, she said. Behind her, she felt Annis freeze in place. But once I have, I will expect you to remember that it was the Nightblade. That it was the Nightblade, a woman of Selvin, who put you there. And her friends, said Jem brightly. Lauren did not turn, but she heard Annis cuff the boy's arm. June met her gaze, unflinching. Then, after a long moment, he inclined his head. If you manage it, I will not forget, and I will see to it that the Senate does not forget either. Lauren nodded. Very well. I suppose we had better get to planning. Actually, said Annis, holding up a finger, while I appreciate our eagerness, we are all of us weary, as I said, and doubtless His Grace must spend time considering how our arrival may work into whatever plans he has already begun to concoct. I recommend that we retire to our other friends and resume this work on the morrow. A sensible proposal, said June. I accept. But the bodyguard with the long scar scowled. You cannot take lodgings in the city. He said. It poses far too great a risk to you, and now, therefore, to His Grace. I will have one of my men fetch your companions, but you will bed here. Lauren glanced at Annis. The girl tossed her head slightly and nodded. Very well, said Lauren. Then she turned to the merchant, Yushan. And I thank you for your generous hospitality. Yushan bowed low, and her sharp look softened with a smile. It is my honor. I am only ashamed that His Grace must bed here in my basement while I continue to move about my house in freedom. You have nothing to be ashamed of, said June. It was only by your loyalty that we have survived this far. When I am restored to the throne, you and I may discuss how best to fill Wojin's position in the Senate, since he will be a member of it no longer. You and I may discuss how best to fill Wojan's position in the Senate. He will have difficulty holding... He will have difficulty holding his seat when he is a corpse. Yushan bowed still lower. Then she beckoned Lauren and her friends out of the room and led them up into her manor. One of the bodyguards came with them and then ducked out the manor's rear entrance to fetch their friends. Lauren pulled Annis aside to murmur to her. "Why did you call an end to the meeting?" she said. Annis blinked at her as if it were obvious. "Because of the exact reasons I said. Mayhap you are not ready to fall over from exhaustion, but I am. At the moment I could hardly plan an escape from this manor, much less the overthrow of a king." Jem snickered, but ahead of them the merchant Yushan turned on them sharply. "You shall not need to plot any escape from me, but if you do, I hope you will not damage my tapestries. They are expensive. And remember that we who are old have not necessarily taken leave of our senses. My ears, in particular, are still sharp." Lauren barely hid a smile. Annis flushed and bowed low. "I will remember it, my lady." Yushan turned and led them on down the hall. Chapter 10! I'm going to take my break a few minutes early since I don't have enough time to finish the next chapter. BRB Home Slices. Slices of home. Hey, we're back.
Alternate pronunciation. What's your favorite part of the new map? Aesthetically, not design-wise. We're going aesthetic first.
Okay. Going for one more stretch. Gonna end off at noon. Chapter 13. While they waited for Chet and the others to arrive, Lauren looked around the rooms they had been assigned. Yushan had put them in one of the manor's front wings where four rooms had wide windows that overlooked the surrounding streets. Yushan had a servant draw drapes across these. I doubt many in the city would recognize you, but it is best to take precautions, she said. Thank you, said Lauren. Think nothing of it, said Yushan. I will have my servants fetch you something to eat. Do you take wine? As much of it as we can, said Jem. Lauren glared at him and he flushed. And, of course, we thank you for your generosity. Yushan chuckled. Oh, I do like you, child. Someone will be along shortly. The food arrived just before their friends. Chet looked around cautiously when he was shown into the apartments. Uzo and Shion went straight to their room once Lauren pointed it out, but Weil stood in the common room of the wing, looking about with pursed lips. Passable, I suppose, he said. At least we are not paying for it. Oh, be silent, said Annis. You will be glad to learn you have a room to yourself, not out of courtesy, but because no one wishes to share it with you. I am glad indeed, said Weil. He went to the meal that had been laid out for them, ate a few bites and drank a cup of wine, and then made for the room Annis had indicated. And with that, I bid you all good night. Wait, said Lauren. You went out seeking information today. What did you learn? Nothing, said Weil, shrugging. I merely sent out word and asked for information to be gathered. These things take time, my dear. Lauren suppressed a growl as he went into his room and closed the door. She sat with the others and picked at the food, but her appetite had suffered after her angry words with June. She had not been sitting long, however, before a knock sounded at the door. Lauren glanced at Annis, but the girl only shrugged. Come in, said Lauren. The door opened to reveal Prince Senlin. Just behind him were Caradwin and the large bodyguard with the scar, who pushed into the room first, looking all around. When he was done, he ushered Senlin inside. Jem shot to his feet at once, bowing to the prince, and Annis and Lauren did the same a moment later. Your Excellency, said Annis. Lady Yerrin, said Senlin. I wonder, Nightblade, might I have a private word with you and your companions? Lauren's brows rose. Of course, Your Excellency, although there are more people than I think would fit comfortably. Uzo and Shion, would you remain here? Shion nodded at once. Of course, Nightblade, she said. Lauren nodded and then motioned... Lots of nodding. Lauren motioned towards her room. Senlin made for the door, and Lauren followed, with Annis, Chet, and Jem behind her. But at the threshold, Senlin stopped and looked up at the bodyguard behind him. I wish to speak with them alone, Joe. The bodyguard frowned down at him. My duty is to see to your safety, Your Excellency. My duty is your booty. Oh, boy. Senlin gave the man a frigid look, an odd expression on his soft, youthful face. There is only one way into the room. They are no threat, and no one else can harm me if you guard the door. You will remain here. Joe's face darkened, but he bowed his head and took a step back. Caradwin, however, remained by Senlin's side, and he did not order her away. They stepped into Lauren's room, Jem scampering in even though Lauren had not asked him to, and closed... I'm sorry, Kristen. It was a slip of the tongue. Okay, I'm done. They stepped into Lauren's room, closed the door behind him. Inside were two fine armchairs. Senlin took one, but when Caradwin went to stand at his side, Lauren shook her head and waved towards the other. I will sit on the bed. You may have the chair. Caradwin blinked in surprise. I thank you, Nightblade. Quickly she went and sat next to the prince, looking somewhat uncomfortable. Lauren and Anna sat beside each other on the bed while Jem sat on the floor by their feet. For a moment, Lauren merely looked at the prince, and Senlin studied her in turn. The prince was little more than a boy, Jem's age, or mayhap a year or two older. He had a thin build. Everything about him looked scholarly and thoughtful rather than noble and dashing, but Lauren could see a keen wit and a deep mind behind his eyes. She suspected they rarely missed a detail. Indeed, Senlin seemed somewhat akin to Annis, though he carried himself with greater confidence, likely the result of a lifetime where every need was attended to without question to a degree that even Annis had never experienced. Senlin spoke first. I have heard tales of the Nightblade for some months now. I thought you would be a bit older. Lauren tilted her head. I mean you no offense, Your Excellency, but you yourself are hardly a grown man. Senlin smiled. Pardon me, that must have sounded like an insult. Indeed, I am heartened to find you so close to my age, and that goes double for your worthy companions. He gave Annis and Jem each a nod in turn, and they returned it, Jem somewhat more eagerly. I often feel that my age limits the influence I can have. It is heartening to meet people like you who have managed to do so much good in so short a time. It might have been only flattery, but Lauren blushed all the same. Thank you, Your Excellency, she said. You are not lacking in kindness or grace. Senlin sighed and leaned back in his chair. Yet mayhap I lack in effectiveness. I came here to tell you that I do not disagree with what you said to my father. That piqued Lauren's interest. Oh, I fear my words may have been overly frank, even harsh. They were, yet they were not unearned, said Senlin. I am no fan of warfare nor of fighting in general, and I do not think Dorsey's wars serve the greater good. Lauren gave Annis a look, recalling their conversation in the basement. Senlin must have been brought up learning the same laws of power as his father, yet he rose above them, or tried to. That, at least, was heartening. I thank you for your agreement, said Lauren, yet I do not entirely understand how it helps. Will your father listen to your counsel, if that counsel is to cease his wars? Senlin sighed. He will not. Though I disagree with him, he does as he believes he must, and as the Senate pressures him to do. Victory in battle pleases them, and for the most part it pleases the people they serve. Without the Senate's support, my father's rule would be toothless. Because it is not, he is able to do great things for our people. So he does great good, but pays for it by doing great harm, said Lauren. That is a weak justification in my mind. I will take a benevolent king like King Anwar of Salvan, who can help his people without having to kill strangers. I have heard that Anwar is a good king, said Senlin, but what of his daughter? She will take the throne from him one day. What if she is mad or cruel? There will be no Senate to stay her hand from evil. Lauren folded her arms. Your Senate has done nothing to stay Wojan's hand. Give them time, said Senlin. We will depose Wojan with their help or not at all. And then your father will resume his border wars in order to please his people and his Senate. Said Lauren, growing ever more irritated, and even Dorshans who are brave enough to object will have to shrug their shoulders at the same time, because that is how Dorsey works. It is, said Senlin. For the first time he ducked his gaze as though ashamed. When I myself hold the throne, I hope to do things better, though I also hope it will be a long time before that happens, for I wish a long life for my father. Rather than soothe her, Senlin's words only made Lauren more angry. I am not you, Your Excellency, and I cannot know what your life is like, but I like to imagine, at least, that I would not be content to sit and watch as my father waged endless war. I am not content with it, he said, and I advise when I can, but I cannot stop him. I mean that in the strictest sense of the word. I cannot stop him. Therefore, I do not choose to spend my time complaining about how things ought to be. I do what I can from my station. He must have seen Lauren tense, for he went on quickly. Please do not misunderstand me. I know it is not enough. That is why I find your story so heartening. No doubt you were raised in other circumstances, ones where you could act more directly. Lauren felt her wrath deflate at once. Senlin's words were far from accurate. She had been raised by cruel parents, and until her 16th year she had taken no action to change things. True, her parents' evil was directed only at her, not at any others, but she remembered the way they had treated her, the way they had quashed even the slightest sign of rebellion. What if they had harmed others? Could she really have stood up to them? It would have been hard, though she hated them and knew they hated her in turn. What if they had raised her with kindness and love, as June clearly had done for Senlin? Chet spoke, his words clipped. Forgive me, Your Excellency, but I think you underestimate just how sky-blessed your life has been. You say you cannot change things in your kingdom, but mayhap you would not feel the same way if you yourself were threatened with the consequences of your father's wars. That is enough, Chet, said Lauren quietly. The room fell silent for an overlong moment. Senlin bowed his head and folded his hands over each other. I fear I have cast a shadow over our meeting. I apologize, for that was not my intent. I look forward to seeing you again upon the morrow, and I hope we may all find a way to achieve our ends together. That is all I wish to say. He stood, and the others did the same, but before he could go, Lauren stepped forth and put out a hand. I thank you, Your Excellency, and forgive us if we spoke too harshly, now or before. I often forget that the world is nowhere near as simple as I would like it to be. Senlin's thin brows rose. Then he reached forth and took her wrist. They shook once, firmly. Thank you, Nightblade. I think we both have a great deal to learn from each other, you and I. He turned to go, but Cerridwen stepped forwards quickly and spoke. Your Excellency, might I remain for a moment? The prince looked at her in surprise. Of course, he said. You are no servant, Cerridwen, though my father and I greatly appreciate your aid in these dark days. Hey, Matbo! Cerridwen nodded, and Senlin finally left them. Lauren caught one glimpse of Joe, the bodyguard, outside the door. He appeared to have been engaged in a staring contest with Uzo and Shiun in the common room. When Senlin emerged, he quickly moved to escort the prince out of the room. The door shut behind them, and Cerridwen turned back to Lauren. I've heard many stories about you. Are they true? Jem's eyes lit up like the moon's. Lauren tried to ignore him. I do not know what stories you have heard. Likely some are truer than others. Is it true that you saved the High King and the Lord Prince? Lauren's cheeks flamed. I found a way out of the palace when it was attacked, but many others helped in the escape. Some gave their lives. Before that, Chet took a dagger in the chest as he defended the Lord Prince. It was nothing, said Chet at once, but he lifted a hand, tracing his fingers over the place where the dagger had nearly pierced his heart. Cerridwen slumped. She moved to the armchair that Senlin had been in and sank into it. I wish I could have done something like that. When Wojin attacked the palace, and we were forced to flee. That gave Lauren pause. She had spoken to few enough people about her actions upon the seat. Mostly it had been Cal, who seemed to think she might have done a better job of her rescue. Yet King Jun and Prince Senlin survived in the end. No thanks to me, said Cerridwen. It was Joe, the king's right-hand man and the one who came here with Senlin and me, who rescued all of us. I only followed along, protected by others but protecting no one. Lauren gave Annis a pointed look. Annis had often spoken similar words, bemoaning her own role by Lauren's side and her uselessness in a fight. Annis's mouth twisted, and she shook her head. Lauren smiled and went to sit in the armchair beside Cerridwen. And who are you exactly, said Lauren. Are you some kin of the royal family? Cerridwen shook her head and held up her arms. In these clothes? I have often worn disguises when I did not wish to be recognized, and you have been walking the city streets. That is true enough, said Cerridwen, but no, I am only an apothecary, and from my parents I have learned some skill in healing. But there you have it, said Lauren. You have no reason for shame. If you have been practicing for any time at all, you have probably rescued more people than I have. I can only save lives by fighting. The world would be a worse place if everyone were like me, but a better one if all were like you. Cerridwen laughed. I agree with you there, yet still I wish I could do more, or that I could have done more than I did. She paused for a moment, fixing Lauren with an appraising look. Lauren met her gaze, feeling a twisting in her stomach. I agree with you, you know. I know that His Grace's actions are wrong. Lauren frowned. So does Prince Senlin, yet that does nothing to stop King Jun. I do not agree with His Excellency either, said Cerridwen, shaking her head. The war has never come to Danfon in my lifetime, yet we feel its effects even this far north. Often our warriors return from battle gravely wounded or even without limbs. Sometimes they have a sickness of the mind instead, a memory of death and pain that they can never banish. Dorshans honor our soldiers above all others. They risk their lives for the good of the kingdom, or at least that is how they see it, no matter how misguided our wars. Yet those wars often leave them a wreck in mind as well as in body. I am put face to face with such maladies. The prince is not. I think it makes him more complacent than he might be. He contents himself with his principles, though they accomplish no tangible change. And what do you do, said Annis quietly, when you see these soldiers, What is your answer to King Jun's wars? In one respect, Prince Senlin is right, said Cerridwen. I can do nothing to stop His Grace from waging battle, and I know he faces pressure from the Senate. Yet neither am I content to wait as His Excellency is. Instead, I tell myself that I will grow. I will learn more, I will gain more influence, and I will do better next time. I hope that one day it comes true if we survive all of this. Lauren nodded slowly. I think I prefer your way of thinking to the prince's. Cerridwen smiled and cast her eyes down. Then she stood abruptly from the chair. I had better leave and let you get your rest, but I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Of course, said Lauren, rising to see her out. I am glad you found us, Cerridwen, and I hope you will come and speak with us again any time you wish. I would enjoy that. Only please, you must call me Carrie. Only His Grace and His Excellency call me Cerridwen, and as a consequence it seems frightfully formal. Lauren smiled. Very well, Carrie. She held the door as Carrie left and then closed it softly. Turning to Annis and Jem, she raised her brows. Today has been a day, she said. It has been that, said Annis. These people are somewhat strange to me. Yet I think I like Carrie, I suppose, the best. And I, said Lauren. Then she noticed that Jem wore a grin that split his face from ear to ear. What are you giggling about? She had heard of you, said Jem triumphantly. She had heard tales of the Nightblade. Lauren shook her head, trying to ignore the flush that crept up her neck. Be silent, Jem. Chapter 13, dude! Bear. Hey, what's up, Sam? Greetings, traveler. Good to see ya. Chapter 14. 44% of the way through the book. Weil had already gone to bed when they came back to the common room. They ate of the food that had been brought and then retired to their rooms. Lauren had put Chet and Jem in one room with... Hadn't Weil gone to bed a while ago? A while ago. He did go to bed a while ago. Oh, that's all right, Sam. I appreciate you showing up. Let me make sure this new link is working, by the way. Yeah. They ate, in the common room, they ate a small meal before retiring to their beds. Lauren had put Chet and Jem in one room with Annis and herself in another. Almost at once, Annis went to bed and fell asleep. Lauren soon joined her. They rose before dawn, all but Jem, and broke their fast on eggs and rice. Soon a messenger arrived, requesting their presence in the king's chambers. Lauren turned to the party. As cramped down below, I will take Annis, Weil, and Chet with me, but the rest of you should remain here. Weil pulled at his collar. Must I come? He said. The king has never seen my face, and I see a little benefit in changing that now. You are here to help secure his rescue, said Lauren, and if he never meets you, how will he know who to pardon when this is all over? Weil held up a finger. You promised me a pardon from the High King, not June. I will not forget it. And besides, I expect an open pardon, one that absolves the crime of anyone who holds it. Crimes of anyone who holds it. Weil paused and pulled at his thin beard. Sky above, I wonder what such a document would be worth to the right buyer. Annis rolled her eyes. But you must bring me as well, said Jem. There is no more cunning mind in our little party. Before Lauren could argue, Chet smiled and shook his head. Take him, he said. I will remain behind. It is as it was in Ammon. I shall prove no more useful than a third shoe. Bertram. Just so people don't have to remember what he's talking about in Ammon. The same might be said for Jem, said Lauren, scowling at the boy with mock severity, but he only grinned as he accompanied her to the manor's basement. June sat in the same place he had yesterday. It seemed he had adopted the chair as his temporary throne. A guard stood to either side, and the larger bodyguard, Joe, sat just in front and to the side of his king. Prince Senlin was there as well, partially hidden behind one of the bodyguards. A good morn, Nightblade, said June. Now let us take counsel and determine our best course of action. Let us now take counsel. Of course, your grace, said Lauren. I have brought Annis with me. She has a brilliant mind for strategy and politics both. I think you will find her advice far more useful than mine. Then I welcome her, said June. He gave Annis a grave nod, which she returned. Lauren motioned for Weil to step forwards, and he hesitated only a moment before complying. This man is called Weil. He is a business associate, hailing from Bertram. It was he who helped us enter the city without being seen. He knows many secret ways and has friends in the capital. From the way June looked at Weil, Lauren thought he must know exactly what sort of associate the smuggler was, but he said only, Welcome. If you can indeed be of help, you will have my gratitude. I am counting on it, said Weil, giving the king an easy grin. A table had been put before June's chair, and a map was laid upon it. Chairs were brought for Lauren and Annis, and they sat opposite the king. The map depicted the city, not all of its streets and alleys, of course, but its layout around the river, as well as the locations of some important buildings. Weil bent over the map, his hands folded before his chin, but it was Annis who spoke first. As has been mentioned, Weil escorted us into the city on a route that few know about. He should be able to lead us out the same way. Yes, of course, said Weil. We will be a larger party now, but we can still avoid detection if we dress you up as beggars. June tilted his head. Lead us out? Why would I leave the city? The room went still. Lauren and Annis looked at each other. Weil studied King June for a moment, and then he sighed quietly. Annis cleared her throat. Your Grace, you are in grave danger while you remain here. That will not change if I depart, not unless I leave my kingdom entirely. Wojin will not stop hunting me just because I pass beyond Danfon's walls. But he will have a harder time of it, said Lauren. I said I would help you take back your throne, but I cannot also keep you safe if you remain here. Nor would I ask you to, said June. I have my guards, but I mean to take back my throne, not merely survive. If I leave, I will look far too weak in the eyes of the Senate. Lauren looked to Joe. The large bodyguard's face had darkened, making the white of his long scar stand out in stark relief. If it is not too presumptuous, I would ask Joe's opinion on this matter. Your safety is his responsibility, after all. I serve at the pleasure of his grace, said Joe. But King June shook his head. Joe does not wish to gainsay me in front of others, but I will tell you what he has said in our private meetings. He agrees with you. He wants to get me out of the city where he believes he will be able to protect me more easily. But I have told him what I tell you now. I will not leave Danfon while I still have claim to its throne. On this matter, my mind is resolved. Lauren looked to Annis. The girl shrugged. Very well, Your Grace, said Lauren. If that is the case, tell us where you would like us to begin. We must unite the people behind me, said June. Wojin is not well loved, neither by my citizens nor by the Senate. If we can inspire a popular revolt, the senators will rally behind us, and Dorsey itself can overthrow the usurper. We must unite the people behind me, said June. Wojin is not well loved, neither by my citizens nor by most of the senators. Only a few of them were in his pocket before the revolt. If we can inspire a popular uprising, the senators will rally behind us, and Dorsey itself can overthrow the usurper. Lauren had to fight hard to keep from rolling her eyes, but to her surprise she saw Annis and Joe both nodding at the king's words. Do you think such a plan is wise? Lauren asked Annis. We speak of ordinary citizens, not trained soldiers. Would they risk their own lives in such a revolt? In a battle? I think they might, said Annis. Even as far away as the High King's seat, I heard how his grace is beloved by the Dorshans. Nowhere is that more true than here in the capital. Yet Lauren strikes upon a truth. By and large, the citizens of Danfon are not trained soldiers. If you reveal yourself, there is a strong possibility that Wojin will manage to kill you before you can rally enough support. A determined force of soldiers could cut their way through even a great mass of loyal citizens in short order. Yet the states have their own standing armies, and the senators can control them, said Joe. And while senators can be conniving, they generally bow to the will of their people. Several senators are in the capital now, as it happens. If we can gain their support, we will have more than enough trained soldiers to resist Wojin. That could work, said Annis, tapping her teeth. But still, at least for now, his grace must not reveal himself. It would be far too dangerous. Then we must fight from the shadows, said Joe. He lifted a hand to scratch at his scar where it met his temple. The people must know their true king is alive, but his location can never be known. That seems a tall order, said Lauren. If they cannot see you, how can you unite them? We will have to proceed slowly, said Annis. Plant the seeds of rebellion one at a time, the way a farmer turns crops. First doubt, then distrust, and finally anger. When the whole city has come to believe in Wojin's treachery, then his grace may reveal himself. You will have a popular revolt already in progress and a trained army awaiting your orders. Prince Enlin leaned forward suddenly. Yet even that plan requires some level of exposure, he said. People spread rumors all the time, but no one places much faith in such rumors unless they come from a strong source. You could reveal yourself, said Lauren, pointing at Senlin. If people saw you even briefly, that rumor would fly far and fast. No, said June, Annis, and Joe all at once. June shook his head furiously and went on. No, I will not risk my son. If anything were to go wrong, it would be disastrous, said Annis. This is not yet a battle of swords, but one of hearts and minds. If Prince Senlin revealed himself, that might stoke the flames of hope in some citizens. But if Wojin managed to capture or kill Senlin, that would quench such hope beyond chance of rekindling. Jem smiled. It should be the Nightblade. They all paused. Lauren turned to him with a frown. Jem, still your tongue if you have nothing useful to say. But that is useful, he insisted. Lauren, it should be you. The people will have heard tales of you. It was not only his grace who knew of your exploits. Caradwin knew of you, and I am sure many others in the city do as well. You can be the one they rally behind, and if Wojin should try to track you down, he will have a hard time of it. There was no one better than you at escaping danger, except for me, of course. Lauren opened her mouth to argue again, but Annis spoke first. I think he may be right, she said. If the Nightblade tells him that King June is still alive, that would be worth more than whispers from a gossiping neighbor. You could tell them Wojin is an impostor and a liar. You would be a messenger of the king himself. I like it, said Weil. Lauren shot him a dirty look, but he only beamed back at her. I myself would never do something so ostentatious, but I appreciate that it has a certain grandiose style. What did I tell you, Nightblade? I place a high value on courage. June nodded and held up a hand. On it was a ring in the shape of a dragon twisted around a great ruby. I will give you this. Ruby? What are Dorsey's colors? Are they red and yellow? Am I remembering correct? Red and yellow. Okay, so a ruby does make sense. I will give you this. It is one of the emblems of my office. I would wager the fact that Wojin does not have it rankles him. It will lend credence to your word. Hey, what's up, Hyped Stream? Welcome to this stream. Have a free book. I'm writing the 6th. I'm doing the final proofread of the 6th book in my series. The first book is available for free at the place at the link I just dropped in the chat. It will lend credence to your words, but Lauren shook her head. You cannot be serious. I'm a spy, not a general. You are more than a spy, said Jem. You are a legend. Anna silenced him with a sharp look and put her hand over Lauren's. Jem speaks with words that are more flowery than useful, but he is not wrong. He is too eager to overestimate your worth, but you are too eager to dismiss it. Let my voice be the middle ground. You cannot single-handedly save the 9 kingdoms, but you can do this. Lauren frowned. I do not share your confidence. Annis's eyes sharpened. Sky above, Lauren, you claim to keep me by your side because you value my advice. I am giving it now. Will you not heed it? Lauren sighed and looked towards the ceiling. Very well. Very good, said June, and I believe I know what your first task must be. Wojin means to address the public tomorrow. It shall be a large event carried out in a great square. We can expect many hundreds of people to gather. No doubt he means to lament my untimely death and decry the High King. He has not properly done so since he took my throne. We could hardly design a better place for you to reveal yourself. That should work well, said Annis. If you interrupt his address, you should have just enough time to tell the people that June is alive and Wojin is a traitor. Lauren's throat had gone dry. And then I will be a poor figurehead if soldiers fill me with arrows. You shall have to be fast and you shall have to escape quickly, said Weil. I can help you with that. My knowledge of secrets is not limited to ways in and out of this city. I know its streets as well. We should go there today, said Annis. Scouting the place first will give us a greater chance of success as well as a greater chance of getting out alive. June turned to the back of the room and beckoned to Carrie, who came forth at once. Take Caradwin with you, he said. I do not doubt the craftiness of this man Weil, but if I understand right, he has not been in the capital for some time. Caradwin lives here and will no doubt have useful insight. Carrie inclined her head towards him. It will be my pleasure, your grace. Lauren nodded and stood. If we mean to do this, we should not delay. I shall return before nightfall, your grace. June nodded and stood. The others were quick to follow, and Lauren led them from the room. This is glorious, said Jem. I knew that tales of you would one day turn to legend, but this is something beyond what I had hoped. Stop treating this like a lark, said Lauren. It seems to me that your whispered rumors have only led me and all of us into greater danger. Some bodyguard you are. Hey, cuteness. Do you want to say hi to stream?
Sure.
I am the writer of that book, Hyped Stream.
Hi, stream.
You look gorgeous today.
I know.
You look gorgeous every day.
Just kidding.
Hey, thanks for the follow, Hype Stream. Appreciate it. All right, now I have to mute for a sec because my wife needs to talk to me.
It's
just 1 second, apparently. See you tonight. Bye, baby. Oh, Jem ducked his head, but Anna smiled at him. That may be true, but only because his tales have added to your power. You wish to do great things in Underrealm, Lauren, but great actions always carry at least some danger. You cannot have the one without the other. We all play by the same rules in the end. Lauren's scowl deepened, and she waved her hand sharply. Let us get on with this, then. Chapter 14, Dan! Chapter 15. Lauren sent Jem to fetch Chet and the Mystics before they left. Once the party reached the streets, blurp, Carrie took them southeast on a path that briefly drew near the palace. Lauren eyed the place with distrust. It was familiar from her dream, and this close the resemblance was even more clear. The mountains loomed above just as she had seen them in slumber. She thought she could even see the street down which the faceless masked army had marched. This is why I'm not an audiobook narrator. Flowing into the front courtyard and breaking around Damaris and Gregor, they passed the palace and soon Carrie led them to a town square. In the center was a statue of a man Lauren did not recognize, a man with a full beard and long flowing robes. He had one hand raised to the sky. But before Lauren could ask about him, Carrie pointed. A large manor dominated one entire side of the square, far more impressive than Yushen's home where they had spent the night. The manor looked to be of the same sort of construction as the palace itself. Two of the square's other sides were composed of shops, while directly across the way were four more manors, though they were far smaller and less impressive than the first. Wojin will speak from there, said Carrie, still pointing at the largest manor. Set in its side was a wide marble balcony that stretched a few paces out into the air, overhanging the cobblestones below. Even as Lauren studied it, her attention was pulled away by the people milling about. Passers-by gave the manor an uneasy look. The merchants hawking their wares seemed to studiously avoid looking at the place, as though they wanted their customers to forget it was there. Lauren saw two children running along, and one of them stopped to spit on the building's wall. A nearby guard gave a cry and came after the girl, but she laughed and scampered off. I am no great judge of people, said Weil, making it clear in his tone that he did not think that was true, but I would wager that these citizens do not enjoy that building. That is Wojin's home, said Carrie, or at least it was before he moved into the palace. Then why would he not give a speech from the palace, said Chet. Carrie glanced about to make sure no one was close enough to overhear them. King Jun used to do so, she said, but it required opening the palace gate so that the people could fill the courtyards inside. They loved Jun, and so he did not fear to do so. I doubt Wojin feels the same. It would surely make him anxious to have so many thousands of citizens inside his very walls. This is heartening, said Weil, grinning. These people seem half ready to revolt already. Annis... yeah, I'm going to make this change. This is heartening, said Weil, grinning. These people seem to be half revolting already. Annis frowned at him. That was a poor joke, and we should not grow overconfident. Let us craft our plan. The crowd could hear me from the statue, said Lauren. It stands on a pedestal in the center of the square. Yet you would be surrounded, said Weil. The crowd would hamper the guards from coming to attack you, but it would not stop them completely. And the people would be a hindrance to your escape as well. Also, there is no cover to stop an arrow. Lauren grimaced. Of course, my first thought was that Wojin would not have a soldier shoot at me if I stood there, for a miss might strike the crowd. Yet, from what I hear of him, he might not be he might not be deterred. Carrie's expression grew dark. No, Wojin would care little for that. Jem bounced on his feet. The rooftops. He pointed to the manors across from Wojin's. Their roofs were the same red tile as most in Danfon, and each a gentle slope meeting in a peak. And Lauren saw now that while they were far shorter than the manor across the square, they were almost of a height with the balcony from which Wojin would deliver his speech. That would do, Lauren mused, but I should like to get a better look. I will find us a way up, said Jem, and scampered off to do just that. It was only a few moments before he returned. Follow me. Just beside the middle building, was a huge pile of fresh-cut lumber. It was stacked neatly and formed a perfect staircase leading to the roof's edge. Lauren nodded. Formed a sort of staircase leading to the roof's edge. Lauren nodded. This is perfect. It will let us get up and down from the roof, and I can address the crowd from there. Yet it still proves poor means of escape, said Weil. If the space is indeed packed with citizenry, you will not be able to get through them after climbing down. There's likely another way off the roof, said Jem. Let us climb up and see. He leaped up the piles of timber like a satyr, and Chet started up behind him, but Weil took a quick step back and raised his hands. I shall leave such exertions to you. I have a physique built for cleverness and charm, but not for climbing. Yeah, I fixed the link. Yay me. Yay Nightbot. Yay Spambot. I have a physique built for cleverness and charm, but not for climbing. That goes for me as well, said Annis. Besides, someone should keep an eye on the smuggler. Weil held up a finger. I work for the king now. That means I am an honest businessman. Lauren arched an eyebrow. Indeed, but all the same, I think Annis is right. Uzo and Shion will remain here with the honest businessmen. Certainly, said Shion. She took a step closer to Weil as though she were ready to catch him if he tried to sneak away. Uzo stepped up on the smuggler's other side. Weil shook his head with an air of long-suffering dignity. Always so distrustful, he said, but I forgive you. Who could blame such an upstanding servant of the king's law? Lauren smiled and turned to climb the pile of timbers, but to her surprise she saw Carrie starting to climb as well. It might be better to remain here, said Lauren. There's no need to risk yourself. Carrie raised an eyebrow, but she did not stop making her way up. You think this is a risk? I think the danger will come during Wojin's speech. If you fear I cannot keep up, do not worry. I am as much a city child as you are. Lauren laughed at that, and so did Jem. The boy had reached the rooftop already and had lowered a hand to help Chet make the last few steps. She is no daughter of a city, said Jem. Lauren came from the forests. Carrie seemed surprised, so much so that her foot slipped. Lauren quickly caught her hand and steadied her. Thank you, mumbled Carrie, and forgive me for assuming. You are more refined than I would expect from a backwater bumpkin. Hey, what's up, Justin Tunes? I am writing, I'm doing the final proofread of the 6th book in my series. Welcome to the stream. I have a free book, and that free book is the first book in the series. Lauren's cheeks flushed. I'm only pleased you have not made fun of my accent the way most people do. As for refinement, I would not say that I possess much, though I have had many experiences since leaving my home. She has indeed, said Jem. You should have seen her when we first met in Cabra. She stared in wide-eyed wonder at all the buildings, and her accent was even worse than it is now. Carrie laughed, and Lauren's cheeks flamed still further. You shouldn't. She has indeed," said Jem. "You should have seen her when we first met in Cabra. She stared in wide-eyed wonder at all the buildings, and her accent was even worse than it is now." Carrie laughed. "I think it is lovely." Lauren's cheeks flamed still further. Doo-doo-doo. Burp derp derp. Chet helped Carrie make the last few paces of the climb. The girl was not quite as agile as she had boasted, though she was no bumbler either. They took a few cautious steps on the roof. Lauren was pleased to find the red tiles were firm under her feet. They would not slip and make her lose her footing, and she doubted if they made any noise that could be heard in the manor below. Jem bounced close to the front edge of the roof, making Lauren's heart skip nervously. She always had to remind herself of Jem's familiarity with heights, for he took risks and balanced on perches that she herself would not have dared. Chet stopped to pace behind the boy, looking at the square below. "It is a bit more exposed than I would like," said Chet. "They might still be able to shoot at you." "The lip of the roof will give me some cover from the street," said Lauren. "I do not mean down below," said Chet. "If he has any archers on the balcony with him or in the building, they will have a clear shot." Lauren looked at Wojan's manor. There were indeed many windows with a good view of her, and the balcony was more than wide enough to allow for archers. "I had not thought of that. I suppose I shall have to keep my words brief then. But at least there are many routes of escape," said Jem, "and not just to the sides, but behind." He pointed, and Lauren could see that there were indeed many rooftops leading directly away from the square. There were not many gaps, and all were an easy leap. "That shall be my route of escape," she said, "but we should find a place to climb down. I would rather know just where to go, rather than have to discover a ladder in the thick of things." Jem led the way, jumping from one roof to another, and they all hurried to follow him, but it was almost no time at all before he stopped and pointed again. There was a drain pipe against a solid shop wall, anchored to the building with thick iron bands that would form perfect handholds. "There," he said, "and we are far enough from the square that I doubt they will be able to reach you here." "It is perfect," said Lauren, "though just to be safe, let us all climb it to make sure it will hold." It did, and when they reached the cobblestones, Carrie led them back towards the square. When they came around the corner of the manor, Annis and the others turned to them in surprise. "Back so soon?" said Weil. "Well, it works," said Annis. "It will," said Lauren. "It is as good a place as any to address the crowd, and there is an easy way to escape once I have done so." "Most excellent," said Weil, "though while you have been scampering about having an adventure, I have turned my considerable mind to our plan. I think there is a way to make your appearance do more for our cause." Lauren folded her arms. "Oh?" Weil flashed his easy grin. "You're an impressive woman, Nightblade, and your black cloak will do you many favors in capturing the people's minds. I think King June is right, and his people have no great love for the usurper. Yet while the masses love to believe in a figurehead, they love still more to believe whatever their fellows tell them." "Speak plainly, smuggler," said Lauren. "I do not enjoy parsing the meaning from your words." "He means that a crowd will follow a crowd," said Annis. She turned to Weil. "That wisdom is known to many, but how do you mean to use it?" "In the simplest way possible," said Weil. "When the Nightblade addresses the people, no doubt some of them will listen to her, but if some of them give voice to their support and loudly, that will sway even more hearts." Yet, while the masses love to believe in a figurehead, they are reluctant to follow them unless they see their fellows already doing so. "Speak plainly, smuggler," said Lauren. "I do not enjoy parsing the meaning from your word." "Simplest way possible," said Weil. "When the Nightblade addresses the people, no doubt some of them will listen to her, but if some of them give voice to their support, and loudly, that will sway even more hearts." Annis's eyes lit up, and she nodded eagerly. "Agents, plants in the crowd to raise a cry." "I do not understand," said Lauren. Weil will hire some few people, beggars mayhap, to cry their support for you as you speak," said Annis. "That will encourage others to do the same. It is one thing to whisper gossip in your own shop. It is quite another thing to shout down a king, even a false one, when his guards are close at hand and armed." "But even the meek will rise up if they think they have the support of their fellows," said Weil. "If we are agreed, then, I will see to the specific arrangements." "More of your friends within the city?" said Chet. Weil cocked his head with a smile. "But of course, the meaner sort. Not quite beggars, as the Yerrin girls said, but close enough. They will require payment, but I do not doubt that King June will be willing to accommodate that, as well as a fee for business honestly conducted, of course." Lauren fumed. Weil confused her sometimes when he seemed so eager to help them, but only until she discovered how he meant to profit from it. "Very well," she said. "I will speak to King June and secure your payment once he has the city. In the meantime, send your messages and have your friends ready to act." "My pleasure," said Weil, bowing low. "I imagine one of the mystics will accompany me to ensure there is no wrongdoing. Which one shall you send, the handsome one or the quiet one?" Lauren looked at Shun. The woman barely restrained a sigh. She went off with Weil. Lauren turned to Annis and the others. "Let us return to the manor and tell the king our plan." "Later," said Annis. "Before we do, we have some goods to retrieve. Did you forget the tailor?" Lauren's eyes widened as she stared at her friend. "You cannot mean to fetch a dress now, Annis. There are more important things to be done." "My dress is unimportant, but your new clothes are not." Annis's tone brooked no argument. She stepped forward to take Lauren's arm. "One cannot take too much care with one's appearance when one is about to become a legend." "She is already a legend," said Jem brightly. Annis ignored him and led Lauren northeast into the city. All right, the next chapter is extremely long, so we're not going to get started with it yet. We will do so after lunch. Oi, oi, oi. Good day. We got through 25% of the book. Bump, bump, ba-da-da-da-da, bump, ba-da-da-da-da, bump, ba-da-da-da-da. So we'll come back. 46,000 words to go. So we're halfway done. And I would love to be able to finish this today. That might be a little bit of a tall order, but if I get in some extra streaming hours, I might be able to do it. It's supposed to be YouTube day, but honestly, I want to get this book finished. I might make 1 or 2 YouTube videos briefly after lunch. Okay, y'all. I should go. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out. Good to meet all the new people. Thank you to Stupid Hand Vlad for following, and Hypestream for following, and House of Dread for the host earlier. I will catch you all another time. I hope you have enjoyed your time here. And yeah, until the next stream. Bye!